Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the recess meeting of the Will County Board for Thursday, October 19, 2017. We will call this meeting to order. This morning will be led by County Board Suzanne Hart will lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance to our flag and then also introduce our clergy.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. I am very, very honored and excited to go and introduce Pastor Thomas Cross, Sr., who lives in Naperville with his lovely wife, Ruth. Everyone would definitely recognize the name. He is the father of former minority leader of the Illinois House of Representatives, Tom Cross and Scott Cross. Pastor Cross is the proud grandfather of 9 grandchildren. Pastor Cross is now retired Methodist pastor, missed by his parishioners in northern Alabama, Chicago, Bolingbrook, last but not least, Yorkville. Pastor Cross is not only a dear, dear friend, but a regular at our Wednesday Bible study at Francesca's. Thank you.
Thank you for having me. Let us bow our head in prayer. Almighty God, unto whom all hearts are open, all desires known, and from whom no secrets are hid, cleanse the thoughts of our hearts by the inspiration of thy Holy Spirit, that we may worthily magnify and glorify thy holy name. God of all people, all ages, all nations, all races, so wisely and so lovingly revealed to us in the life works of Abraham, of Jesus, Muhammad. You have taught us for centuries the beauty and power of community, the width, the depth, the expanse of embracing one another simply because it so fills and completes us, because that's the way you made us. And yet we, your beloved, spend so much of our energy allowing ourselves to be consumed by the dung that divides us, that our own children, when they get through laughing at how foolish we are, become sadly disillusioned at how small we behave. Help us, Holy God of all, to see the folly in the industry of division, as well as the sweet, simple joy that comes from knowing that we as a board, each member and collectively, did something today to make the lives of people in our community a little more tolerable, a bit more hopeful. And help us finally to remember that in every decision we make, as Moses reminded, every decision we make, we are in the midst of choosing life instead of death, blessing instead of curse. Amen. Amen. Thank you.
Ready, Nancy?
Yep, I'm ready.
Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Sure. Mayor? Here. Brooks? Here. Ogala? Here. Summers? Here. Singer? Here. Moran? Rice? Here. Harris? Here. Trainier? Here. Benefield? Here. Fritz? Gould. Militello. Balich. Frizzalone. Winfrey. Parker. Staley Ferry. Dollinger. Markham. Hart. Tumino. Weigel. Ferry. Colitis. And Mustis. Thank you.
24 present, 2 absent.
24 present, we do have a quorum. Entertain a motion to place on file certificate of publication. Moved by Mr. Markham, second by Mr. Ferry. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Sure. Mayor. Brooks. Ogala. Summers. Singer. Rice. Harris. Trainier. Benefield. Fritz. Gould. Militello. Balich. Frizzalone. Winfrey. Parker. Staley Ferry. Dollinger. Markham. Hart. Tuminello. Weigel. Ferry. And Mustis. Thank you.
24 affirmative.
24 affirmative, motion has carried. Next up, the motion to approve the minutes of our Will County Board regular meeting of September 21, 2017. Ms. Summers makes a motion, second by Ms. Winfrey. Any discussion? Any discussion? Previous roll by Ms. Parker, second by Ms. Militello. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Contrary, motion has carried. Next up, approval of the Will County Board special meeting, September 27, 2017. Moved by Mr. Brooks, second by Ms. Winfrey. Any questions? Any questions? Previous roll by Mr. Gould, second by Ms. Dollinger. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Contrary, motion has carried. Madam Clerk, would you please acknowledge the elected officials and the media that's present this morning?
Sure. County Clerk Nancy Schultz-Foots, our County Executive Larry Walsh, Recorder of Deeds Karen Stucco, our Sheriff Mike Kelly, State's Attorney James Glasgow. We have our Chief Judge here with us today, Richard Shainstead, and also Mayor Roger Clare from Bolingbrook. The media, we have Farmers Weekly Review Nick Ryer, Southtown Susan Lafferty, Herald News Alex Ortiz, and then Times Weekly Brock Stein. Good morning and welcome.
Duffy is on.
Oh, and our Duffy Blackburn, our auditor, wherever he is. Oh, and Larry Walsh is here too. Welcome.
Thank you. So, next up is honorary resolutions and proclamations. If County Board members Herb Brooks and Denise Winfrey will come to the podium, we have an honor of a young man with the Silver Gloves Championship.
Now, Denise, if you don't mind, I'm going to ask JoJo if he can stand to my right. You know, I have some vision problems, and this is what we're going to call participation proclamation. And what I mean by that, Gloria, is when I get to his name, JoJo going to pronounce his last name. Is that okay? I have vision problems, remember. Proclamation honoring Joseph JoJo
Awanongia
Jr. to the Silver Gloves National Champion. Whereas it is the intent of the Will County Board and the Will County Executive to recognize outstanding achievement of individuals, organizations in the Will County. And whereas Joseph JoJo
Awanongia
Jr. traveled to Charlotte, West Virginia in June to compete in 2017 USA Boxing Junior Olympics. And whereas Joseph won 9 to 10-year-old 85-pound division, becoming a Silver Gloves national champion, continuing his momentum to become a 2-time national champion. And whereas Joseph started boxing at the age of 5 and began to compete at age 8, and at age 9 years old, he was already had 16 amateur bouts and ranked #1 in the nation. And whereas Joseph is a straight-A student at Eisenhower Academy School in Joliet. And whereas the International Boxing Federation and the United States Boxing Association has presented this belt to Joseph Jr., congratulating him for his success, focus, and determination. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Will County Board and the Will County Executive hereby recognize Joseph Jojo
Awinongia
Jr. for becoming a Silver Glove National Champion. Be it further resolved that the Will County Board and the Will County Executive wishes Joseph
Awinongia
Jr. the best of luck and success to all the future endeavors. Dated this 19th day of October 2017, attested Nancy Schultz Voots and Lawrence Walsh County Executive. I so move.
Seconded by Ms. Winspear. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Contrary, motion
So
is
this
carried.
proclamation is for Joseph Awinongia Jr., right?
Can I say something?
I have to thank God for this opportunity. I have to thank you all, and it's been a very good time being here.
All right.
And also from me, thank you for everybody, what you guys doing for my son. My son is not just everybody from Joliet here, all of them helping my son, what he's doing, and what a lot of people they go to their own pocket and give him money, especially if he's travel. You know, my son, Nancy, my son since my son was born. And Bolingbroke Mayor also the same thing. Paul Coppers, I wish Paul Coppers is here, the new sheriff also, everybody who is involved with my son. It's not just my son, it's Joliet's son, it's everybody's son. For him from Joliet to win a national twice in the road, that's something special. And he's a good kid also. My son is not better than any other person here, their kid, but I choose that road with him. And he promised me that if he's doing good at school, I have to keep on training him, and he's doing good. So whatever he's doing now, I try to just push him, keep him going. I wish the Bolingbroke Mayor was here. I wish the Paul Coppers, I wish a lot of people was here. I wish your dad is here. But that's life, your dad was supporting me since I came to Joliet here. And, he's not here now. We all one day, we're gonna die. Nobody gonna live forever. My dad also just passed away. But it depends what you do in your life. What you do, and because we don't know exactly where we're going. So we always, our mind always greedy. We have a mind that is always greedy. But we don't know exactly what you're going. So always, most of the time, what we're doing, we find a way to make sure we do everything right. So when we get to that level, we're okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. All right. Thank you, Joe. Good job. Thank you, grandmother. Thank you. Keep up your good work. Okay.
Continue.
All right, thank you. Dan, want to get a picture?
Why don't you get in the picture, Joseph?
Yeah.
The grandma can get in the picture.
Oh, okay.
But, yeah.
Oh, all right. Okay. All right, come on. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, I will do that. Now, County Board members Herb Brooks and Denise Winfrey have a number of check presentations they want to make. And the first one up is the Spanish Center with oh, you're changing that? Okay. I'm only here.
Thank you, Mr. Executive.
Okay.
Good morning, everyone. We're very pleased this morning to be here and be able to give out some checks to 3 community organizations who have continuously supported, engaged, and reached out to the community. We do this through the help of our partner, Waste Management. And the first one that we're going to recognize this morning is the Forest Park Community Center. We have board members here along with the Executive Director, Betty Gavin. Thank you, and that's it. You're gonna get okay. Okay. So we're happy this morning to present a check for $10,000 to the Forest Park Community Center. Betty?
Oh my goodness, thank you, everybody. It is indeed an honor and a pleasure to be with you this morning and to accept this generous donation. We count you all as valued partners of the Forest Park Community Center. We cannot do the work that we do had it not been for you. Waste Management, we thank you. I must say I am so proud of my district commissioners, Commissioner Winfrey, Commissioner Brooks. Commissioner Brooks would not let me leave this podium without saying I am in his district, District 8. Okay. But I'd like to thank the county as well for the great work that you're doing here in our county. So thank you so much. And I have with me the president of the Forest Park Board.
Thank you very much.
Vice President Tom Bolak, my treasurer, who will not let me leave here without this check, Stan Moffitt. So again, thank you all so much for the great work that you're doing here in our county. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Thank you.
Another organization that's done a lot in the community is the Will Grundy Medical Center. Some of you may not be familiar with the free clinic. It was established over 30 years ago. We have with us this morning the Executive Director, Sean West, and I'm very pleased to say that I happen to be a member of that board of directors. We're very pleased to be able to give Sean a check this morning for $15,000 for the medical center. This is in a grant, 15.
Well, thank you so much. I and we at the clinic are so very appreciative. And this $15,000 will go a long way because we're able to leverage our donated dollars. Every dollar provided, we are able to provide upwards of $20 in health care. So this $15,000 will provide $200,000 to $300,000 in health care. So we are so very grateful. Thank you. Thank you so much for supporting the community. And I also want to say that healthcare is not just a healthcare issue, it's an economic issue. When people have access to healthcare and they're healthy, they are able to work and contribute to the overall greater good of the community. So any individual having access to healthcare is not only a win for that individual, but it's a win for the entire community. Thank you so much for your continued support and enjoy the rest of your day.
also 15. Our third organization is the Spanish Community Center. We have with us this morning the Executive Director, Veronica Gloria, and several of her board members. And we've had a little mix-up on these play checks, but the real checks will be correct. This is a $15,000 check, and the one for the medical center was also $15,000.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for your support. For those of you who don't know about the Spanish Community Center, we've been in the community for 48 years as of this August. And as many of you may know, we faced some recent challenges because of the state budget impasse. But through all of that, we've come through it much stronger. And it's because of the community rallying together to see the value in helping the most vulnerable in the community. And so I really do thank you for recognizing the importance of supporting us, especially to Commissioners Brooks and Winfrey, and also Lawrence Staley Ferry, who right away came to see how they could come to the aid, not of just our center, but everything that it represents and everyone that it helps. Also, for those of you who don't know me, I was born and raised here in Joliet to Mexican immigrant parents. And I had the privilege of being able to go to Harvard University on a full ride scholarship because of people who believed in what I had to offer and everything that people had really inculcated in me here in Will County. And although I was offered jobs in New York City or Chicago, I did choose to come back because I believe in the good things that are happening here, including here in this room, everyone who's present and wanting to make this a great county for everyone. And so this support is going to go a long way to make sure that we can continue to give back and develop more people who in turn will give back to the community. And I'd also like to introduce board members who have also really stepped up to see how we can continue to support the community. That includes Duffy Blackburn, who is our treasurer, Cesar Cardenas, who is our president, and Lawrence Staley Ferry, who is also on our board. So thank you so much.
Next up, we would like to welcome Chuck Mayer, County Board Member Chuck Mayer, and Suzanne Hart to the podium, recognizing the men and women of labor.
Thank you, Larry. This is an exciting day, and anyone to know my background, we're my in-laws, my husband's fourth generation, national decorating, painting, decorating with our fabulous tradesmen, our painters and decorators that are out there, and I understand always the process. So this is so great because we have not done this. I want to bring down some very special gentlemen to our county. Tom White from Three Rivers, can you please come? Doc Gregory from Will Grundy Builder Trades, and as well, we need Dave from Del Rose from Ask Me Please. It's very important to our county.
And I'd also like to invite up a couple of our county board members that represent districts. We can't have the whole board because I know there's unions and involved in everything, but I would like to have Annette Parker come down and Don Gould and Deb Militello, and Mark Ferry, could you join us? You know, this past year, we went through a lot of negotiations on a lot of different sides, not just with our unions here that represent the Will County, but also our the private unions out there with all the building and capital projects we are doing. And I would like to, before I read my resolution, I'd like to have Annette Parker come up and recognize the names of all the county unions that impact the Will County itself.
Good morning. I'd like to recognize American Federation of State, County, and Municipal Employees, Council 31 and Local 1028, the Fraternal Order of Police 738, Metropolitan Alliance of Police 123, and the International Association of Machinists and Aerospace Workers 124. Thank you for everything that you do.
I'd also like to have Doc or Tom give us a list of all the unions that are involved with us with the, can you go through and at least paraphrase several of those, can you? All right, thank you, Doc.
Good morning. So my name's Doc Gregory. I'm president of Will Grundy Building Trades, and for all the people that don't recognize me or know me, I was born and raised in Joliet, and I'm a lifelong Will County resident. The locals that we have, we got 28 of them in our building trades, and they start off from electricians, carpenters, teamsters, operating engineers, plumbers, painters, pipe fitters, let me think, millwrights. There's a lot of them, I ain't remembering all, but if I miss a few, I apologize. But, you know, for getting recognized for honoring labor by the county board, it wasn't that long ago that a lot of our guys were struggling bad, losing houses. And what the county board, Will County Board, and the members have done is amazing. We've put together a sheriff's facility. We're going to start on the courthouse, and our people are going to work. So we appreciate everything you guys do for us and girls, and keep building. Thank you.
Thank you, Doc.
Excuse me, is there someone here that's representing with the local 150? We had heard that there was a car in the side. Anyone? No? Okay, we don't want to forget them.
Okay. You know, as Doc said, I mean, you guys can see all the different areas that the unions have touched us. But the unions don't just touch us. They have impacted labor across the board, whether you're in a union or not. What these guys have done for America in helping strengthening the workforce in this country cannot go unrecognized. And so I'm not up here to talk about unions as an organization. What I'm up here to do is recognize the men and women that have built this country that aren't just part of a union, but it's all of us, all the staff that we have here in Will County, everybody that is considered almost the middle class. And so with that, I want to recognize the men and women of our Will County unions. Whereas a vibrant working class is essential to the success of Will County and the state of Illinois, and whereas the men and women of our local unions represent and promote the working class in Will County by lifting hourly wages for Illinois workers and creating livable wages and standards, and whereas the men and women of our local unions drive local economies by increasing consumer demand in Illinois, saving or creating 43,000 jobs and nearly $4 billion in economic output. And whereas the men and women of our local unions support strong communities by decreasing worker reliance on public assistance programs, increasing tax revenues at all levels of government. And whereas the men and women of our local unions are at the forefront of equal pay and equality by providing contractually required pay and benefits regarding race, ethnicity, religion, gender, sexual orientation, age, disability, marital status, or military status. And whereas the men and women of our local unions institute democratic workplaces, giving workers a voice and protecting workers against the abuse and thus contribute to higher morale, greater job satisfaction, and lower employee turnover in Will County workplaces. And whereas the men and women of our local unions work hard to maintain high standards, safety procedures, and enforce rules established in the Occupational Safety and Health Act, and whereas the men and women of our local unions play a vital role in developing the work skills in Will County and joint labor management programs, training 98% of all active apprentices in Illinois construction industry. And whereas the Will County Board signed a project labor agreement with the Will and Grundy County Building Trade Council and Three Rivers Construction Alliance for our extensive capital projects. And whereas the Will County Board this year also approved a 5-year agreement with ASME, now there be it resolved that the Will County Board and the Will County Executive recognize the hard work and benefits that the men and women of our local unions throughout Will County provide our citizens, dated this 19th day of October 2017, attested by Nancy Schultz-Voots, Will County Clerk, and Lawrence Walsh, Will County Executive. And I so move.
Moved by Mr. Mayor, second by Ms. Hart. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Contrary, motion has carried.
I want to thank you very much. Mark, would you hand these out? Sure. You guys can stand and applaud. I think that's appropriate. I'd also like to say that anybody would like a copy of this resolution, please contact the county board, and we will make sure that your local or organization has a copy sent to them. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Yeah, can we get a picture with you guys? Sure. Anybody like to say anything? Mark? Yeah. How about you, Dave?
I'd like to say a few words. I'm Dave Delrose. I'm the president of ASME Local 1028. I'm one of the employees unions here at Will County. Speaker Mustis, County Executive Walsh, and members of the county board. It's my honor to be here today to represent, be a representative recipient of the union employees on behalf of the union employees here in Will County. You know, the citizens of Will County, they expect Will County government to serve them and to serve their needs, and that's what the workers here at Will County do. And they often do it with not a lot of recognition, which in some respects is validation that we're doing our jobs well. So on behalf of my union, and I know that I can probably speak for the other unions of Will County, we do appreciate this recognition by the county board and the county executive. Thank you.
Anybody else? No? Okay, so we can come up and get
I don't want to be in the picture.
Before we go on, I'd like to introduce and recognize we have a field trip from our Will County Independent Living Organization, a number of students that are here to see how county government works, and so let's give them a nice round of applause out in the foyer. Thank you. Thank you for coming. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. All resolutions approved at the September 21st, 2017 County Board meeting have been signed by the County Executive. Under new business, we have two organizations that are here today to give us an insight on their budget presentation. First up is METRA, the METRA program and budget presentation. Mr. Norm Carlson, chairman of the METRA board, will be presenting.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and may I introduce the gentleman standing next to me. This is Jim Derwinski. Jim is going to become the CEO, Executive Director of METRA on January 1st, 2018. Jim served 6 years in the United States Navy as an electrician on nuclear submarines before joining the railroad industry in 1995. A couple years later, he came to METRA as a locomotive electrician. He has risen through the union ranks to become our executive director. At the present time, he is the chief mechanical officer, so he is responsible for maintenance of all rolling stock, our locomotives and our passenger cars. So also our maintenance facilities, a major ones you see along 47th Street on the Dan Ryan Expressway on the old Rock Island Rocket House. So this is Jim Derwinski, and hopefully you'll be seeing more of him in the days to come. Mr. Chairman, would it be appropriate for me to ask for a few minutes to recognize two citizens of Will County, Don Orsino and Jack Partolo?
Certainly.
Thank you.
That's very appropriate.
METRA is here today in good standing due to the very hard work, long hours, extraordinary use of business and personal experience, and finally the common sense of judgment of Don Orsino and Jack Partolo. First, let me talk about Don. From the moment Don was appointed as acting CEO in August 2013, he took charge. He immediately set out to stabilize an agency and restore employee morale. Despite intense media pressure, Don's straightforward approach, direct answers to questions based on decades of railroad experience, and his people skills brought stability to METRA. METRA employees will tell you they will go absolutely to the end of the earth for Don, and many of them do every day of the week. Don's career started almost 43 years ago, collecting tickets on Rock Island suburban trains between Joliet and Chicago. He was following the footsteps of his father and grandfather. He soon qualified to become a locomotive engineer and still maintains his license and qualifications. You might be surprised who's up running the engine on some of your trips downtown. He has worked in every district of METRA and within many departments, and thus his accomplishments are many and varied. Most importantly, to the country as a whole, Don has earned great respect from the members of Congress. He literally turned the tide by testifying before several congressional committees on why an extension of time was necessary to implement positive train control. Within 5 weeks of his testimony, Congress acted and extended the deadlines. Don's career was the cover feature in a recent issue of Railway Age magazine. We could talk much longer and much more about Don, and perhaps at some future day we may have an opportunity to do so. Jack Partolo. When thinking about Jack, the words grace, accomplishment, and distinction come to mind. We want to thank you, Mr. Chairman, for this opportunity, for appointing Jack in the first place, because he was a real help at METRA, significant help. Jack has been the one and only person to represent Will County on the Metro Board of Directors. He has served from 8 years, from 2009 to 2017. There is profound respect among the board members. When Jack speaks, everyone listens. He is held in very, very high regard by his fellow board members. Jack has been very active and integral, using both his extensive business and political leadership experience. He became a role model for all of us, particularly for a certain brand new member joining the board with only a business background and no prior political involvement. Jack quickly became my go-to guy. When advice and counsel was needed, my first call would always be to Jack. For a while, it was virtually daily. Some days more than one. Jack freely and willingly gave his time to all of us. Perhaps the greatest testimony we can give to Jack's leadership that he charted Metra's course going forward. Metra is considerably better off for Jack's service. Mr. Chairman, I hope we can find a way to further recognize these two distinguished residents of Will County, Don Orsino and Jack Partolo. They have provided great public service to Will County, Metra, and the residents of Northeast Illinois. Let us turn to the Metra 2018 budget. First of all of us here in this room are in the same business, providing public service. And thus we have more in common than you may think at first blush. Second, we are probably facing the same economic issues. Our objective is education, informing you of the challenges facing Metra. Our desired outcome is to determine a path on which we can work together to benefit Will County and northeastern Illinois. As we discuss the current situation facing transit, we should consider that Metra, PACE, and CTA are the threads that hold the economic engine of northeastern Illinois together. We need to protect, maintain, grow, and preserve these vital public assets. Public transit benefits from those who will never use it, as well as those who use it daily. Please consider the congestion on arterial roads as well as expressways if Metra, PACE, and CTA did not exist. Metra has an economic model that is not sustainable. This is in large part due to macroeconomic changes in our society. Transportation funding for operating costs is derived from sales taxes. These macroeconomic changes affect government agencies as well as the transportation funding. The result of this is we are all in the same boat. We will get to that a little bit later. Difficult choices is what the Metro Board faced in approving its preliminary 2018 budget. To achieve a balanced budget, we are undertaking cost reductions, fare increases, deferral of capital spending, and the first time in Metra's history, service cuts. Low ridership trains are being removed from the schedule. Regarding Will County, construction of the Romeoville station will be completed in 2018. We are working with New Lenox on their transit-oriented development and their proposed new station. New floors and HVAC will be put into Lockport Station. We will continue to work on coordination of the new Joliet Station. And when we come to service cuts, there is a midday train on the Southwest line that operates between 179th Street, Orland Park, and Manhattan. This train will be terminated between Orland Park and Manhattan. Why? The average passenger count southbound is 1 passenger. The average passenger count northbound is 2 passengers. We are also looking and probably will adjust the very late night train schedule on the Rock Island. One trip has 4 people from Will County riding on it. The other trip has 2 people from Will County riding on it. On the system as the whole, the late evening trains are averaging less than 2 people per route mile the equipment travels. So what we are doing is we are looking at adjusting schedules so that we can preserve the daytime service when the majority of our people ride. 70% of the ridership is in the rush hour. Our challenge is to get more passengers on the non-rush trains. A major assumption in our 2018 budget is that the 10% cut in a certain tier of the sales tax will be restored on July 1st, 2018. If that legislation is extended where the 10% goes beyond July 1st, we will probably be looking at midday adjustments. The details of our budget are in the handouts that we have presented to you. I am not going to get involved in the numbers at this point. We have staff that will be able to answer your questions whenever you have them. Looking ahead at 2018 and beyond, Metra intends to issue its first business-oriented strategic plan at the November board meeting. That's a couple of weeks from now. Underway, we have strategic analysis going on a fare structure study, a cost-benefit structure of what we get the greatest return in investment in infrastructure, a station optimization study, a white paper on Metra's value to the region, and a technical paper on maintenance of long-lived assets. So let me get back to what the core issue is. The genesis of Metra's, and I would say other transit agencies' policy, economic model, was determined 40 years ago and is no longer applicable in our current society. 40 years ago, sales taxes were based on a manufacturing economy. Today, we have a services economy. 40 years ago, retail sales were based on a brick-and-mortar concept. Today, we have an online concept. More fuel-efficient vehicles and electric vehicles result in less fuel being purchased and thus less gas and sales taxes. ADA costs are accelerating at a pace beyond the excess of cost of living, and then we have aging population as well as pension and public benefit costs that are increasing the significance within government budgets. All of this is affecting our capability and perhaps a lot of people's capability, a lot of agencies' capability to provide good services to the public. A specific number, the impact of the 2% collection charge and the 10% PTF reduction is $15 million in 2017 and $25 million in 2018. We need to address this issue of sales taxes on online purchases. If you would notice, the Tribune had an article last Sunday that said that because online entities are not charging the county increments, that the impact on Cook County alone is $100 million. So this is something I think that we need to bring to our attention, but it has to be brought at the state level as well as the federal level, because a lot of this is related to the rules on interstate commerce, and the federal government is the one that judges the rules on interstate commerce. There is activity underway in Washington on this, but I think this is something we all need to join together because I believe it affects all of us. Thus, Metra is facing its most significant financial crisis in its 33-year history. There is chronic underfunding of capital needs due to the state's financial situation and the intense competition for federal dollars. Metra expects to receive in the next 5 years only 1/6 of the capital that it should be receiving based on the numbers that the RTA provides. So that is why we say that the Metra's current economic model is unsustainable and puts a cloud on the future. It probably puts a cloud on a lot of people's futures beyond us, so I don't think I'm speaking just behalf on ourselves. So let's have some good news to close on. Metra's relentless focus on cost has resulted in, despite the funding cuts in 2017, through August, we were slightly positive on our actual results versus our budget. In comparison to its peers, Metra has the lowest fare per mile, We are at 70%. Our fares are 70% of the average of the peer group. We have the lowest unit operating cost, in part thanks for Jim and his focus on maintenance. We have the best performing on-time performance at 95% or better for the past 31 months. We have the oldest fleet of locomotives and the cars in the country. There are 4 cars on the BNSF service to Aurora, and occasionally they work their way down on the Southwest service because the equipment is pooled, that next year will get their Medicare cars. Yes, they are 65 years old. We rededicated Locomotive 100 on its 40th birthday. September 30th, 2017 was its 40th birthday. That is unheard of, to have a diesel locomotive in service for 40 years. The longest recent example was 36.5 years for the former units that operated by the Burlington between Chicago and Aurora. Again, testimony to our people. So, with our new CEO in place, Jim Derwinski, Don retires like December 31st. We look forward to a brighter future, and we will continue to address our cost. We will continue to address our service levels, but we are dedicated to do what we can with the resources that we have. I want to thank you for speaking perhaps a little bit longer than I usually do, but I just wanted to, again, impart the education, hopefully, and secondly to say we are willing to come and talk to you whenever you would like us to come and talk to you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much, Norm. Any questions? Ms. Trainier?
Good morning. Thank you for a wonderful presentation. I did see that article in the Tribune that you referenced, and I believe the federal legislation is called the Marketplace Fairness Act. I'm wondering if you have any sense if this session of Congress is going to address it, because clearly lower taxes collected on sales is impacting everyone from the White House to the courthouse.
We do not have that, but I will tell you that what we have done is we've sat down with Kurt Dillard and Leanne Redden. Kurt is the chairman of the RTA board and Leanne is the executive director. They are looking at it. We are trying to arrange a second meeting with them as we speak, but what we are trying to do is work through the RTA and hopefully bring PACE and CTA into it as well, and then have a combined position that would come out through the RTA. So I think that's how we wish to attack this, but I think separately we need to work together and determine how we can work with the state, because perhaps there's some steps even the state can take at this point to assist in the collections. But I think I'd like to say, I'm not speaking just on behalf of Metro. I think I'm speaking on behalf of all of us, and this is something we need to pull together on.
It does affect every level of government. I mean, it's a problem. It's a concern. The changing ways that consumers purchase, it really makes a huge difference.
Thank you.
Mr. Singer, did you have a question?
Good morning, Norm. Metro does a nice job. Appreciate you being here today. To what Jackie had said, in your comments, the question about the changing way that people buy goods today in the country is a big concern, and it obviously is something that needs to be handled. And forgive me if I missed it when you were talking. I was trying to follow, but just want to make sure I get it. What percentage of revenue contributes to your overall budget as provided by retail sales tax?
Roughly 50%.
Roughly 50. I knew it was big. I just wasn't sure what the number was. And it's down, because of these changes in the way that people buy and the way commerce is done today, it's down by what now, approximately?
That I do not have off the top of my head, but what we have watched is the steady decline in the growth rate. That's what triggered us.
Right.
So I think, maybe perhaps Lynn and some of our, Sam Smith, our people can work on this and get some numbers back to you.
I would love to know that, because in my job outside of here, our company plays a role in that process, and it's interesting because, you know, if you look at the way that the online retail sales have grown, it is on average, give or take, a 75 to 100% increase every year over the last 5 years. And now we're at 15 to 20% of all online goods, or excuse me, all goods being bought online. If that percentage increase continues at that pace, you know, the problems you're speaking about here will be quickly accelerated.
Yes, and frankly, that's why we're speaking out, and we are kind of at the top level of this, and we're starting to dig down more and more. But let me just take your question a little bit further. Today, fares cover 1/3 of our costs. The other third is the sales tax. So in other words, of our operating expenses, 50% out of the fare box, 50% from through sales taxes, rough round. There's some other revenues in there. Now we come to capital. Historically, 1/3 of what we have received of our $1 billion budget has been in capital. Next year, we are only going to get $200 million. We should have $1.2 billion if you take the RTA numbers. So people think that their fares cover everything. It does not. I'll also take another sidebar. My background is accounting, auditing. I was with Arthur Andersen for 34 years. We need people to understand, and that's all of us, the difference between capital and operating cost. Capital is investment. It's not expense, it's investment. And we are short of investment across the board. So we need to look closer at the investment. There has not been a capital bill in the state of Illinois since 2009. That's part of the problem.
And there won't be for quite a long time.
And there won't be for quite a while either. So what are we going to do? We cannot allow this asset to deteriorate because it's a vital asset. It's also a legacy asset. Commuter services started in 1855. That's how long they've been around. So again, we're speaking out, we're seeking partnership. We need to somehow address these problems both at the state level and at the federal level.
Thank you. Mr. Mayor?
I had a different question that I'll come back to, but just kind of to follow along my colleagues here, Illinois has put a surcharge on the collecting of tax. How much is that impacting you all?
That number I have. $9 million.
Wow. That is a big number. Okay. My second question has to do with services. You talked about, and I totally understand if you have one rider jumping on a train and going, that there has to be some changes in the scheduling. Have you done any research on when special events go on, like how many Cubs fans will jump on tonight and take off and go and then come home? Do you plan on being able to address special events so that there might be transportation available for people during those times?
Yes. And one of our proposals is a $10 round trip ticket. And if you look at our average fares, particularly for people from Will County, that is one hell of a bargain.
It is. Okay, so speak into the camera, market that, so we make sure that we get people on your train.
Yeah, exactly. So, you know, come on, ride our trains. We also want to encourage people to use their app. That is, and we are now up to around 35% of our tickets are sold on the app. We wish people to encourage to do that. That helps us a lot.
Right. And I want to point out that my wife did that last night, and when she went to see the Cubs win with my sister-in-law, so it was a great ride to and from, and we appreciate that.
Well, we have a whole bunch of people that take the Rock Island to 35th Street and transfer to the Red Line and take the Red Line to Wrigley Field or just walk over to Sox Park. One day, we ran 3 sets of equipment on a Burlington schedule because of a Cubs game. And we can count on that the 11:47 arrival in Union Station on the Burlington, you can count on 2 trains on that schedule whenever there's a Cub game.
And Ms. Rainier?
One more question for you, Norm. I was going to ask you about it, and I think you've explained one of them, the weekend tickets, $10. The onboard surcharge, that's if you buy a ticket cash on the train, right?
If a station is open.
If the station is open. So if
In other
it's
words,
not open, you're
yes.
fine.
And what I mean by the station being open, if there is an agent in the station and you do not buy the ticket from that agent, then there is a $5 surcharge.
Got it.
Obviously, we want people to buy the tickets so the conductors can tend to their safety duty. The other reason why it's $10 is so our conductors, if they do collect it on the train, don't have to deal in singles.
Or $5, yes. Thank you.
Mr. Mustis?
Yeah, I don't really have a question, but I would like to say a few words. As someone who was a user of Metro for many years, I have to say the service was always excellent.
Thank you.
Always on time, unlike me. But it was an extremely dependable, enjoyable ride. And I used to catch the train in either Mokina or Frankfurt and go in. But the service was always excellent, and it's a lot of value. The other comment I want to make is about the sales tax collection, internet sales. That has all types of implications, including it tilts the playing field to our brick and mortar retailers that are here. It puts them at a disadvantage. So that's another aspect of it. The other thing I'd like to mention is NACO, National Association of Counties, which, if you don't know, is one of the largest, most powerful lobbies in Washington, D.C. Because around the country, counties have more authority. Illinois actually has kind of a weak county government. The rest of the country has a very strong, basically county-type government. So I can tell you they are lobbying heavily and are very engaged in this issue of sales tax. So we are represented through NACO. And of course the mayors and managers, the municipal leagues, they're all down there in Washington lobbying this. So I think Washington is hearing us, and hopefully Congress will put something in place so we can level the playing field for all our retailers. So that's the only comments I wanted to make.
Any other comments, Director Dwight? Another question?
I just wanted to quickly clarify that it appears that we could all agree that the World Champion Chicago Cubs are saving Metro's budget by the number of people that are riding those trains to get there. I just wanted to clarify that for you.
Well,
you don't have to answer that, Norm.
No, I will. The single largest day we had of ridership was the Cubs championship parade with the Hawks champions very close behind it. So we need to root for our teams because we have a hell of a day of business when those occur.
Thank you, Norm, and Jim, thank you very, very much. Next up is the PACE budget presentation, and that will be given by Chairman of the PACE Board, Rick Kwasniewski, and Rocky Donahue, Deputy Executive Director. Gentlemen, please come forward.
Thank you, Mr. County Executive, Mr. Speaker, and County Board members. Thanks for having us here again this year. We want to make a presentation of our budget and just talk a little bit about some of the improvements and things that are happening in Will County with PACE. First of all, we do have a balanced budget this year. Our total budget is around $410 million. $232 million of that is in suburban services, and the other 178 is in ADA paratransit. We plan no service reductions throughout the region whatsoever. We do have a proposed fare increase. It's 25 cents for a single ride and for cash, and for Ventra transit value. 50 cents on our premium routes. Our premium routes is basically bus on shoulder, Cubs routes, Sox routes, Bears routes. Those are $4 currently. They'll go to $4.50. The passes, if you get a pass or if you're on our dial ride service, there is no increase with that. And our last increase of any kind was back in 2009. We certainly obviously continue to suffer from some of the same things that you guys do. We did have a reduction in state funding to the tune of around $5 million. And also, obviously, the lower sales tax on the RTA tax throughout the region is affecting our agency as well. We also, obviously, in the Tribune today, we just read that there's going to be $8.5 million taken out of our ADA budget as well. So, you know, we continue to try to figure out how do we provide services, even though we are getting a reduction in revenues. We do have a hiring freeze with the exception of essential positions, which is basically bus drivers, replacement bus drivers, and some key positions if for some reason someone would leave. We also did increase our non-union employee health insurance contributions to help try to offset some of the revenues, and looked at other cost-saving measures as well. Regional projects keep moving forward with pace. We've got a number of them. The installation of electronic bus trackers, so those are the signs that basically will tell you the bus is coming and when. We're implementing our Pulse Milwaukee line, which is an arterial rapid transit line up north. We're completing 2 park and ride lots along I-90, which was a partnership with our tollway, Illinois Tollway at Barrington Road and Illinois 53 for like an enhanced bus on shoulder project with the I-90 expansion. We're expanding our bus on shoulders this next year to the Edens Expressway as well. Our Pace South division in Markham, we are completing that conversion to CNG buses. So it's a CNG facility. Our goal is long-term to replace all of our facilities with CNG. And so we're very excited about trying to complete that conversion. Toyota Park Transit Center is completing construction this year, and we'll be finalizing and finishing all of our installing of Wi-Fi on all of our fixed route buses. Our capital budget this year is $62 million. Majority of that is going to go towards replacement buses and paratransit vehicles, as well as community vehicles. There also are some upgrades to some garage facilities as well. Our regional ADA budget, as I said, is $178 million. There is a 25-cent fare increase on that as well. That's our first fare increase since 2009 in Chicago, and 2005 was the last one in the suburbs. Starting January 1st, we're also going to be reimbursing riders for trips that have more than an 80-minute wait. Currently, there's no reimbursement for that, and we thought that was a way that we could work out with the ADA community to make sure that we're providing better service. Will County has had a lot of things happening with PACE. Matter of fact, I apologize. I was going to say Roger Clare, the representative from the county board, was unable to be here today. He had an emergency. He did hold the public hearing yesterday at the Joliet Public Library along with Rocky, but he gives his apologies for not being here today. Our bus on shoulder, as I said, is really continuing to blossom. We're currently running around 2,300 people a day. It's up about 14.5% from last year. We've got a partnership with Plainfield, the village of Plainfield. We're constructing a $4.8 million parking lot for 423 spots in partnership with the village of Plainfield. They will actually be doing the construction. We will be reimbursing them for that. We're also, that'll have also restroom facilities and a small waiting area for the bus on shoulder passengers, because actually the bus on shoulder really starts in Plainfield and then continues down Interstate 55. We're also looking to work with them in the future to see if there's a way we could do perhaps a satellite garage for our bus on shoulder buses, because quite frankly our Heritage Quarter garage here in downtown Joliet is at full capacity, and as we add buses there's no place for them. Our corporate partnerships continue with Amazon. We've got a couple of routes that we've worked on with them over the past year, and as well as Centerpoint. Community relations, Beth Gonzalez is here with us today. She's the rep for Will County. She continues to work with companies on economic development throughout the county, from everywhere from Joliet to Monee, Romeoville, Bolingbrook, Wilmington, with companies like Amazon, Green Corps, Dollar Tree, G&W Electric, Berlin Industries, just to name a few. So she's really working hard throughout the region, working with companies to try to provide some form of public transportation for them. We're also excited. We continue to work with Metra, one of our biggest commuter connector service programs in the area is to the Naperville stations from a good portion of Will counties from Park and Rides. We're very excited to continue that service moving forward as well. We also do have partnerships with the Will County CED and also the Will County Governmental League. We worked very closely, Beth worked very closely with your Will County Freight Friendly Study, I'm gonna make sure it said it right, to provide any information that we could in the way of working with businesses or trying to provide commuter workforce opportunities for people throughout Will County. So with that, I'll kind of open it up to questions. We do have Rocky Donahue here as well, our Deputy Executive Director. And again, Beth is here as well. Afterwards, if there's any issues or questions, she'd be glad to answer them as well.
Mr. Mayor.
I just would like to ask, how's our safety record on the shoulder ride? How's that doing?
I'll let you answer that. I think it's very well, but
it's been actually excellent. And we started in 2011. So 6 years running, there have been 2 incidents, and both of those incidents were not Pace's fault. 2 cars veered into the shoulder and hit our bus. So it's been fantastic, very good.
Very good, thank you.
Just to follow up on that as well, in the future, I think what IDOT's really looking at is expanding those shoulders for us. With I-55, it was a little bit different. We used the existing shoulders. So I think if there is ever a way where there's going to be a pay lane, you know, they were talking about a toll lane perhaps on 55, they would be making that wide enough for a normal lane. And in conjunction with the tollway are actually dedicated full lanes as well. So it really depends on the highway that we're working on, but it has been very successful, and I think people are used to it being there now, versus at the beginning it was kind of a little bit different for everybody.
Ms. Trainier. Pull your mic down, Jackie, a little bit.
Do you think we're really going to get to that paved lane on 55?
Let me answer it this way. You know, it was an issue where it got brought up. I believe they did have a private partner to work with IDOT on that project. From my understanding, it needed to get legislative approval last April. That did not happen, and I believe that contractor that was interested, partner, went on to other projects. So I think at some point there may be an opportunity, but that's something that, you know, IDOT would really have to work on. I know at CMAP, we had a CMAP meeting, combined CMAP meeting this past week, and one of the things that was talked about was tolling lanes throughout the region for future infrastructure projects. So.
Yeah. I've noticed those tolling lanes in other cities, you know, on their highways, and seems to move things along a little bit.
Mr. Mustis?
Yeah, a couple of comments. One is I mention to you probably every year, and I talk to you throughout the year because as Frankfort Township Supervisor, we do run a PACE program. You know, one of the challenges has always been in the paratransit area, and part of it is just getting people with disabilities into the system, the RTA and PACE system. And I've been pretty critical in the past because it's not an easy process for people to get registered for if they're disabled to get on that list. But there has been some improvement. So that's what I really want to say. I think it's gotten a little better in getting people registered as people, folks who are disabled to be qualified for the PACE service, paratransit service. So it's gotten better. We'll keep working on it, guys. I think it's still needs some additional improvement. You know, the other is about workforce. As you're well aware of, we did a freight study, community-friendly freight study. But part of that freight study wasn't just about freight movement, it's about workforce mobility. And I know, Rick, you were part of that. You worked with the county and the CED and so forth. And certainly the employers have a lot to do with helping establish routes to these employment centers. But outside of that, is there any other additional efforts that we're looking at of how do we get people to, let's say, the larger employment centers? If they have companies who are not participating or who are not trying to come to some kind of accommodation, what are we doing outside of that? Are we looking at some things of how do we get people to these employment centers?
Yes, you know, and one of the things is, you know, and I think your study is certainly going to help move some of those conversations forward. We've been able to have better conversations with developers to have them value public transit as being part of something that they can offer their tenants. Beth has had very good relationships and continues to do that with companies to get them to really understand the value of some of those services. Just to give you an example, I know this past weekend we had an opportunity to provide a bus for Will County, and Director Hart was there along with County Executive Walsh, with Senator Duckworth, and we talked about public transit and the importance. And quite frankly, one of the things that we've been talking about with Centerpoint in particular is trying to figure out if there's a way to put a bus, I don't want to say station, but some kind of a bus facility within the middle of the intermodals. And the reason why is because what we're having troubles with is, in order to be able to get people to work, everybody starts at different times. So how do we make 20 stops and have it be productive? So one of the ways that we've been talking about was trying to go ahead and get something developed there and then basically run shuttles that the companies would pay for within the development. And I think for the first time, I think Centerpoint and some of the other developers are actually perking up to this idea because they see some value. And Senator Duckworth's staff actually said, you know, perhaps there's some opportunity for some federal funding for that type of facility. So, you know, if there's suggestions about how we could better try to work and get people to work, I think that's part of that whole study that you guys did and a big part of that.
Well, I think, Rick, and you pretty much touched on what I was thinking, and it would be creating bus terminals. So you're talking to Centerpoint about creating a bus terminal in the middle of Centerpoint. If we could strategically place them around the county, around population centers, they're still going to have to get to the terminal. But I'd like to see if you're experimenting with not only the business establishing those terminals, but PACE establishing those terminals, and you could establish them in metro lots, for example. Just throwing that out. I mean, I don't think it's something that would necessarily need a lot of infrastructure, because I believe it's there. You just have to establish that there's a terminal in a particular area so people can get on the bus, and that bus goes to, or buses go to different areas. So
yes, and exactly, and we do have some of those currently, the park and ride lots and the terminals along I-90 that got put in with that expansion with the tollway. Those are all express bus services that are very similar to the I-55 bus on shoulder. And quite frankly, what ultimately we'd be creating in Plainfield is pretty much that very same thing with the new park and ride lot that we're building along with the facilities there. So, but I think we're getting through to people that public transit is an opportunity, and it's something that we can work on with them. So I think these companies are beginning to really look at that way to be able to get people to work.
Any other questions for Mr. Kwasniewski? Mr. Donahue. Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you
you.
very much.
Appreciate it.
Very informative. Next up, Land Use and Development Committee, Mr. Weigel, Chairman.
Morning, everyone.
Morning, Tom.
First item is open the public hearing. I make a motion to open the public hearing for land use
Moved by
cases.
Mr. Weigel, second by Mr. Ballage. Madam Clerk, call the roll.
Sure. Mayor? Brooks?
Yes.
Ogalla? Yes. Summers? Yes. Singer? Yes. Rice? Yes. Harris?
Yes.
Trenier? Yes. Benefield?
Yes.
Fritz? Gould?
Yes.
Militello? Yes. Balich?
Yes.
Frizzalone?
Yes.
Winfrey?
Yes.
Parker?
Yes.
Staley Ferry?
Yes.
Dollinger?
Yes.
Markham?
Yes.
Hart?
Yes.
Tumanello?
Yes.
Weigel?
Yes.
Ferry?
Yes.
And Mustis. Thank you.
23 affirmative.
23 affirmative. We are in public hearing. Please be advised, absolutely no new evidence or information will be allowed once this land use public hearing is closed. Today we have 3 cases to be heard. Case ZC-17-012, case ZC-17-034, and case Z3-17-040. We got a number of people that have signed up to speak, so we'll go through them first. First one on speaking on 17-012, Mary Burnitz. Mary Burnitz. Mary Burnitz. Okie dokie. Next speaker on ZC 17-034, Nicole Campos. Would you like to speak or?
Questions?
Okay, you signed up to. Come on down.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Nicole Campos. I am the property owner at 13041 West Haley Road. We are here for a special use permit for Echo Housing to allow us to place a brand new mobile home on our property for my elderly parents to reside in. I don't really have any new evidence other than what I've presented at the previous 2 meetings. You know, I've been working with Land Use Department, everybody. I want to thank them because they have been fantastic in helping me, specifically Dawn and Brian, who's helped me. I've been dealing with Dawn since December before we even moved into our home. This is not something that we entered into lightly. We actually searched for properties based on zoning that would allow this. Like I said, this is not something that we entered into lightly. Keeping my parents close by is very, very important to us, to me, my husband, who's also here, and our 2 small children. But I do believe strongly in independence for them as they age. They're seniors at this point. My stepfather is handicapped. He's an amputee. Mobility is becoming an increasingly difficult issue for him. So this just makes sense. They currently live in Galena, Illinois on 7 acres, and that's just not possible for them to maintain that property anymore. So like I said, when we went through this, we've been, you know, we've done a tremendous amount of research. This is not something, like I said, that we did haphazardly. This is an $80,000 project. It's a brand new mobile home. It's to match our property before we even applied for this, I spoke to both my neighbors to the east and the west. As far as placement, what would work for everyone, I have letters of support on record from both of those property owners. When we decided kind of where to put it, it's not the most cost-effective where we're placing it, but it makes sense for my neighbors involved, also for us, as far as privacy. We've planted screenings. We're going to plant more additional things around the home for more privacy. I presented some pictures at the last hearing. You're not able to even see the unit really from where the roadway is because of the screenings that we already have. I've addressed all the concerns and questions at our previous meetings as well. I've presented evidence on, I FOIA'd the information for all the Echo properties because of the claim that if we are allowed to do it, everybody's going to want to do it. This ordinance has been in place for 30 to 40 years. And when I pulled the map, they're not all concentrated in one area. This doesn't fit everyone. Not everyone wants their parents living by them. I do. I want to take care of them now. This is very important to me and my family. Unfortunately, there's been some, moving them into our home and things like that. Again, I have a two-story home. It's just not possible how, the way our home is set up. Taxes, property values has been also addressed kind of by a couple other concerned residents. I've pulled tax records on all the other properties, the Echo locations, and their immediate neighbors to show that they are on trend with the rest of the neighborhood. I've spoken to our tax assessor for my township, Manhattan Township, before we did this to verify that taxes would not increase. They won't decrease, but they won't increase either. That's pretty much all that I have to add. We have been working closely with land use. We've followed every single thing that they've asked us to do. This has been so far with permit fees and getting letters from different departments, over $1,000 process just for the permitting fees. Like I said, this is something that's very important to us and not something that we entered into lightly. So I'd be happy to answer questions when.
Any questions? Any questions? Any questions? Oh, Ms. Rice?
I don't have a question, I just have a comment. I thank you for coming in today. I thank you for coming in today. It's nice to hear how you really worked at being a good neighbor, and it's also nice to hear the story. Reading a packet of information doesn't always remind us about the personal aspect, so thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next speakers on case ZC 17-040 are the engineer Brad Hensley and the owner, I'm sorry, but I can't make out what your name is. If you want to, it says questions only, just questions only, okay? All right, if anybody has a question at that time. Is there anybody else in the audience that wishes to speak on any of these zoning cases? Anybody else wishing to speak? Anybody else wishing to speak? Mr. Weigel?
Make a motion to close the public hearing.
Moved by Mr. Weigel, second by Mr. Benefield. Madam Clerk, call the roll.
Sure. Mayor? Brooks? Yes. Ogalla? Yes. Summers? Yes. Singer? Yes. Rice? Yes. Harris? Trainier? Yes. Benefield? Yes. Fritz? Yes. Gould? Yes. Militello? Yes. Balich? Yes. Frizzalone?
Yes.
Winfrey? Yes. Parker? Yes. Staley Ferry? Yes. Dollinger? Yes. Markham? Yes. Hart? Yes. Tuminello? Yes. Weigel?
Yes.
Ferry? Yes. And Eustis.
Yes.
Thank you.
24 affirmative.
24 affirmative. Public hearing has been closed. Mr. Weigel, continue.
Our first case is a map amendment from A1 to E1 on parcel B. This is in Frankfurt Township. Committee recommends approval, and I so move.
Moved by Mr. Weigel, second by Mr. Singer. Any questions? Any questions? Previous roll by Mr. Ferry, second by Ms. Summers. All in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Contrary motion is carried.
Next case is a special use permit for Echo Housing in Manhattan Township. This is E2 zoning, on 5.14 acres. Committee recommends approval, and I so move.
Moved by Mr. Weigel, second by Mr. Mayor. Any questions? Any questions? Previous roll by Ms. Summers, second by Ms. Winfrey. Oh, got a question, Judy?
I really don't have a question. I have more of a comment. I just think that it's important for everyone to know how much this impacts the people who are looking to do this. And so the lady who is going to be moving out here, she wrote me a letter, and she said, thank you so much for your favorable vote last Tuesday. We both appreciate this more than you will know. We have a pretty good kid and are very proud of her. Thank you for your understanding and compassion. We are truly grateful. God bless you. It's really great when you have the ability to have your parents be close to you as they age, because their parents will not get any younger than they are right now, and the problems that they will deal with will continue to increase. And there were suggestions that, you know, she has her parents live in the basement or upstairs or such. I have elderly family members that I care for, and I know how hard it is, and it just gets worse and worse. So if you have the ability to put a Echo home on your property so that that home is typically designed for somebody who might have to use a wheelchair or somebody who has to use a walker, and it's maybe one step in and they can easily put in a ramp, it makes the most sense. And what Nicole said was, you know, it's $80,000. So this isn't something that is cheap and that everybody is able to afford. They're fortunate they're able to afford it, and I'm glad that they are. And I'm glad that we have Echo housing here in Will County, because I think it's very important for those who wish to use that.
Thank you. Thank you. That's why we got it.
Second, Mayor.
We have a motion and a second for previous roll. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Contrary, motion has carried. Mr. Tuminello? Okay. Thank you.
Our next case is a map amendment from R2 to C6. This is in Lockport Township along Briggs Street to allow for soccer fields. Committee recommends approval, and I so move.
Moved by Mr. Weigel, second by Mr. Balich. Any questions? Any questions? Any questions? Previous roll by Ms. Winfrey, second by Mrs. Staley Ferry. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Contrary, motion has carried.
We also have a resolution 17-257, amending section 155-14.90, fences and walls in the Will County zoning ordinance. This is to allow for electric fences, E1 and E2 zoning districts. This is low-level electric fencing for keeping of animals. Committee recommends approval, and I so move.
Moved by Mr. Weigel. Moved by Mr. Weigel, seconded by Mr. Markham. Any questions? Any questions? Previous roll by Ms. Dollinger, second by Ms. Parker. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Contrary, motion has carried.
That concludes my report. Our next meeting will be on November 14th. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Tom. Next up, Finance Committee, Mr. Frizzalone, Chairman.
Good morning, Will County. Is it still morning? Yes,
Michael.
it is. Good morning. We're getting close. We have some business today. Our first up is our monthly financial reports. First, we have the report from the Illinois Department of Revenue showing sales tax remitted to Will County for the month of July 2017 to be $1,803,446.05. RTA tax received is $2,079,653.69 for a total of $3,883,099.74. We also have the monthly treasurer report dated August 31st from the Will County Treasurer, Steve Weber. We have the quarterly report dated 12/1/2016 through 2/28/2017 from the treasurer. We have the quarterly report dated 3/1/2017 through 5/31/2017 from the treasurer. We also have the quarterly report dated 6/1/2017 through 8/31/2017 from the treasurer, and the semi-annual report dated 12/1/2016 through 5/31/2017 from the Will County Treasurer, Steve Weber. We also have the quarterly financial report for the 9 months ending August 31st, 2017, from Will County Auditor Duffy Blackburn. I'd like to put all these on report and on file, and I so move.
Moved by Mr. Frizzalone, second by Ms. Staley Ferry. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Contrary, motion has carried.
Next up, we have the determination of the estimate of the annual aggregate levy. So first, I'd like to make sure everybody has the copy of the current numbers that are on their desk. When you're looking for those, I just want to make sure I do it this month and next month to thank Rashawn and Karen and Melissa for all the hard work they do, getting me all the numbers and letting me drive them nuts for a while. So what you have on your desk is the estimate of the annual aggregate levy. We are voting on the total levy at this point. Actually, you'll see the breakouts for the individual levies, those still to be determined based on how we finalize the budget. You'll notice a couple of things, one being the health department, which I know everyone was concerned about. In this levy, we would be increasing the health department levy by about 3.7% to $10 million. The final levy, which would be $1 million, estimated levy, $455,016, which winds up being a rate of 0.5941, does include new construction and only new construction. So I will be making the motion to move this forward. Obviously, after a motion and second, anyone that is, feels the need to want to increase the tax levy can certainly speak to that. But on 17258, I'd like to make the motion to move this forward.
Moved by Mr. Frizzalone, second by Mr. Mayor. Any questions? Any questions? Ms. Trainier.
I am very concerned about the fact that we are not taking in the consumer price index levy money that we had discussed in your proposed budget, Mr. Executive. We have a lot of things going on in Will County right now, as we heard even this morning from the folks from Metra and PACE. Every single year we see a lower number in terms of people shopping at a brick and mortar store, and it is going to eventually catch up to Will County in a big way. And I think that it is very short-sighted for us to discount taking in this $1 million potentially in the cost, the CPI, when we are at a time where we're investing a lot into our county that is eventually going to need to be paid back in part through those RTA sales taxes. I would rather take the $1 million today and pay something, pay cash for it, make an extra payment, get ahead of the game, not pay interest on some portion of some of the projects that we're working on, and still lower our tax rate, than to pass this opportunity for the $1 million and later get caught short, really short, which could very likely happen in a few years if we don't do, if the country doesn't change how it does taxation, and as consumers begin to change more and more towards shopping in places that are not collecting a county sales tax or a state sales tax. So I think that that is extremely important, and I have been on this board now for a little over 8 years, and it's become abundantly clear to me that the direction this county as a board wants to go is to lower the tax rate. And my understanding is if we collect the CPI, we are still going to lower this tax rate. So I would hope that my colleagues will consider strongly supporting a motion to include the CPI in this aggregate levy for this next budget year.
Thank you. Mr. Tyler or Markham? No, you just leave the, don't punt.
There we go. So I still have a couple of concerns that I brought up in the special
meeting the other day for Finance Committee. After the county executive presented his budget, there was a lot of criticism that we didn't include any money for the union contract, and it's my understanding that the county board budget will not reflect that, which means that we're going to have to cut things out of the budget. And I don't know how we can vote on this if we don't have a plan going forward to cut $1 million out of the budget. There's also a lot made about the overtime, that we didn't budget enough for the overtime, which is more money that we're going to have to make up for. And if we do have to make cuts, it is my hope that the county board starts with cutting our own budget rather than cutting things that will hurt services that the county provide.
Thank you. Mr. Harris?
Okay, my comments is also along the same line. This levy does not accurately reflect the needs of the county. I think we are faced with some times where the state is cutting funding to us with almost $2.4 million with the LDF decrease. I think we can lower the rate, which this board agrees that we must do, and also take advantage of much needed revenues we need. The EAV has been increasing year after year at almost a 5% rate, and that by itself will lower the rate. So I think we need to look at this and plan accordingly. The demand in Will County is increasing, and we need to adjust for that. And we do have an opportunity to generate revenue, which we all agree that we need. Maybe we should do more from a legislative end and put pressure on Springfield to give us what we deserve. The residents deserve that. And we, as a county board, need to make sure we're doing our part. So I think we need to step up our efforts and let them know where we're coming from, what we need, and we're not just going to sit back and take it. So unless we do that, and until we do that, I think we got an opportunity now to get what's needed for the county. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Harris. Mr. Ballage.
Yes, about a year ago, I did a referendum in Homer Township, and it passed by 87%. And the referendum basically said that the people wanted government to go to referendum before they raised their property taxes. And the reason for that referendum, and the reason why the overwhelming majority of the people in Homer Township, which is a big portion of my district, voted that way, is because people that aren't working in government don't get raises anymore, and all their bills keep going up, and they're all finding it real difficult to make ends meet at the end of the month. Their disposable income, it decreases every month. Now, we can, as government, expand the size of government, keep it the same, or contract. I'm one of those people who believes we should lessen the size of government. But, you know, majority of the board probably doesn't agree, so we should at least keep it the same. We don't need to increase the size of government and increase the taxes on residents who voted for us to keep government smaller so they can live a comfortable lifestyle. And when you guys talk about raising taxes, go in your district and ask your people, do you want to increase tax? And somebody, I remember a couple years ago, said it's only like a couple McDonald's hamburgers. Well, when they heard that on the video, I had people tell me, well, I'd rather have me get a couple more McDonald's hamburgers than the government get more money. So I'm just pointing this out. You know, I guess we have a philosophical difference in opinion, but I know for myself, it's a hard pill for me to swallow to just take the new construction, because I would rather take nothing and cut the taxes a whole bunch and give more money back to the people that they pay in taxes. I shouldn't say give it back, because it's their money to begin with. So, I mean, when you guys are talking about raising the taxes to the CPI, go in your district and or take an ad out in the paper and tell them why you want to raise taxes, and see if they're happy with you, how many phone calls you get.
Thank you. Ms. Summers?
Thank you. First of all, I want to make it very clear this isn't about raising taxes, and I don't think any of my fellow colleagues are even talking about raising taxes. However, that being said, I am new to the board. Things are not very clear to me on what we are doing with this today. I feel we need to be much more transparent. I feel we as county board members need to roll our sleeves up, sit down, and talk to each other. I understand that a lot of these things do go through committees. However, in good conscience, until I have a clear picture of everything that is going to be cut, because there will have to be cuts, and if we're talking about possibly going after overtime, I know that affects our sheriff's department. For me, in one of the most rural parts of the county, that could be very detrimental. And so that being said, I will be voting no against this.
Thank you. Mr. Brooks.
Mr. Executive, I try not to turn my microphone on to be repetitious in what was said, but I think a lot of things does bear repeating. And I think with 17,258 as it presented, Mr. Chairman, is that setting the revenues, there's still some shortfalls, there's still some gaps. And I guess what I didn't hear was how were some of those things going to be addressed, such as have been repeated already, the sheriff's overtime, the contracts that we passed on. So even though this sets the revenue, it doesn't really address the entire, and I hope we can have some further dialogue about it, how we're going to cover the other shortfalls that have been repeated already. And that's my concern about with this levy. Thank you.
You know, keeping our eye on the bureaucracy, that's the role of an elected official. Okay? And part of this is an oversight to ensure that our citizens are being addressed and their concerns are being dealt with and protected, not overregulated and not overtaxed. To come out and say that we need to raise this or use the CPI because eventually something might happen is what has gotten Springfield into trouble, because when you eventually put money into an account that will eventually be used, it's already spent before the eventually takes place, because people will find a way to spend money that's available. This is not our money. This is not, it's the citizens' money, and we cannot go in and take money that we don't need. We're presenting a balanced budget from the numbers that I've been presented and from what we've taken a look at and had discussions in all our committees. You know, we're looking at a revenue stream here that is supposed to be able to address our needs. And once we've passed this, it's up to the folks that we give the money to make sure that it's addressed. They always seem to come up with more money. Love watching when spending happens at the end of a year because people still have dollars available. So I'm going to be a yes vote for this because we've always been able to find ways to take care of our expenses when they happen, including the sheriff's overtime. But I don't want to go in and assume that something's going to happen and put dollars. I'd rather find a way to make sure that we can find it. And we seem to have been able to do that over the years.
Thank you. So I'm not really like a financial wizard or anything, but consumer price index is the increase that it costs to live every day. So when we talk about taking the consumer price index, I don't know where we're taking it from. We're taking it from our residents who are paying taxes. So it's already costing them more to live. That's already increased. And we want to then take, it's cost them more to live, go to the store, pay the rent, whatever. Now we want to go ahead and raise, get an additional amount for the county's levy from that same group of people. I don't understand this. I don't understand the thought process on saying, well, we want to represent the little guy. Well, representing the little guy, you're taking more out of their pocket. And another thing is, the budget that was presented to us, the Sheriff's Department will always have overtime because they have no idea what's going to happen on a day-to-day basis when they have to send their guys out for something that might happen, some tragedy, some event that causes them to work more. But the budget that was presented here is zero amount in the sheriff's overtime budget. So the budget that Mike's been working very hard on, and the discussions have been at Finance Committee. If you're not able to come to Finance Committee, we have people who record it so you could watch it. And we're putting, Mike is set to put a dollar value in there for the sheriff. So that makes it a more balanced, more transparent budget rather than where are we paying for their overtime. I'm just gonna have to tell those guys there's no overtime, so when you call, there's nobody available because they can't pay overtime. It doesn't make sense to me. So I think that I'm like Steve. I don't even want to take a new construction because it continues to grow government. We need to really tighten our budget as much as we possibly can. It will be a yes vote for this, and I'm glad that we're not taking the consumer price index.
I've been on this board for 25 years now. You know, some people may think that's too long. Some people think I bring a certain history to this board. When I came on this board, the levy was approximately $50 million. Actually, I think it was a tad less. Which means, in my tenure here, the levy has gone up about 270%. I can tell you for most of our residents, their salaries haven't gone up 270%, nor has their property values gone up 270%. You know, I sometimes reflect on my work as the supervisor of Frankfort Township, and I work a lot with seniors in my township, some outside my township. I work with those seniors who still try to stay in their home, but have to come to a food pantry to supplement their food budget. Now, you may not think it's a big deal. Is this a little money? Tell that to the senior who's being taxed out of his house. I happen to think every dollar counts. Yes, do we keep it tight here? Will this keep our budget tight? Does it make us make decisions on where money should be spent? Absolutely. Is it easy? Absolutely not. What is easy is this to say, we'll take more money from our residents. You know, if there's one tax I think that is universally disliked, or people are concerned about, I shouldn't say disliked, that they're concerned about, it's their property tax. People literally get taxed out of their homes, especially our senior community. So we should not take it lightly when we raise taxes to say because you think the government has a bigger need than the senior community here, or whatever community you want to use here, or just a resident. I happen to think there's not a bigger need for government. I've said on a number of occasions, I wasn't elected to represent the government. I wasn't elected to represent bureaucracy. And I certainly wasn't elected to see how much expansion of government we could provide. I was elected to represent the people and their needs. And I'll represent my district and maybe some other districts who are recipients of government services. I understand. You're going to represent your constituency because that may be what's best for them. But for my district and my constituency, and I think for the county as a whole, we should always try to hold the line on property taxes best we can. And that doesn't mean we haven't raised them over the years, because we certainly have. But let's try to hold on not expand government or that tax base burden any more than we need to. On overtime, let's be clear, in the Sheriff's Department, the majority of overtime is not for patrol. The majority of overtime is created by the jail, the correction officers in the jail. And we try to address that in part by putting some additional correction officers into the system, and that should help cut overtime. I know we're not discussing the budget here today. This is about the levy. But I think as we go forward, you will see that the folks are working on the budget, and I'm not. That's basically Mike and Melissa and some others. You know, I let them do their work, or we let them do their work, and then they kind of come back to us. But if you have somebody really, if you want to participate in the budget process and you want to talk about where you think the resources should go, I know Mike was probably going to say this anyway, so I hope I'm not grabbing some of your...
You are.
Yeah, I know I am. You know, speak up, get involved, come to the committee, come to the workshops. Let us know where you think the resources should be placed. You can say it again. So, you know, I'm just saying that we should all be sensitive to property taxes, because it is the one area that I think is pretty sensitive, and it can really impact people, especially our senior community. So I get off my high horse now. Thank you.
First, Mr. Trenier, our cash reserves are holding. They're not being depleted, so I don't believe there's time for the worry about the sky falling yet. We're solid in that respect. Ms. Summers, I take great offense to someone saying I'm not transparent. I really do. I've had emails sent out asking for anybody's input on the budget. I've mentioned at every meeting that I have, if anybody has questions. Elizabeth and I spent a couple of hours the first year going over budgets and looking at numbers that I did it. I have no problem talking to anybody about budgets. Now, I'm going to tell you something. My budget that I bring forward is not going to be perfect. But I can't say anybody's would, and I can't say the executives would be either, but apparently no one has said anything about the current budget. If you have questions, if you have concerns, obviously you don't think one single item should change, because no one has sent me anything. There's got to be something in there. Somebody might have made a typo even. So, and no one commented on the overtime. Not a single person, after looking year after year, how the overtime, which is in the $2.8 million, and we budget $1 million for it. Now, granted, it's taken me a couple years to figure that system out too, but I figured it out now. And Herb, to your comment, I think we've got 2 weeks yet until the finance meeting. At that time, all the things that Melissa and I and Rashawn have worked on, we'll be able to present that then. That'll be a finance meeting. That'll give everybody time before we vote on the budget in November to make comment, to make suggestions, where movement should be. I'm not just saying cuts. Maybe someone thinks one department gets too much and another doesn't get enough. That's a valid point. Maybe it should change. But if you take a look, and I've said this many, many times, I look at every single line item. And if I see $10,000 of bottled water in a line item, I ask the question, why are we paying $10,000 for bottled water? That's gone now. It's not in there. But I look at those items. And I'm really sincere about this. I look at every single item. So I am opening up to everybody that wants to talk, sit down, go over items, but at the finance meeting on November 7th, we'll bring all of those changes that we see fit to make. As I said, we're moving some additional monies into the healthcare department. When we're finished, there may be more in there. I don't think we won't go less, but there may be more available to them based on the rearrangement. So in closing, I'd like to ask you to call the question.
Yes, thank you.
Madam Clerk, call the roll.
Mayor? Yes. Brooks? No. Ogala?
Yes.
Summers?
No.
Singer? Rice?
No.
Harris?
No.
Trenier?
No.
Benefield?
Yes.
Fritz?
Yes.
Gould?
Yes.
Militello?
Yes.
Balich?
Yes.
Frizzalone?
Yes.
Winfrey?
No.
Parker?
Yes.
Staley Ferry?
No.
Dollinger?
Yes.
Markham?
No.
Hart?
Yes.
Tumanello?
Yes.
Weigel?
Yes.
Ferry?
No.
And Mustis?
Yes.
Affirmative, 9 negative.
15, did you say?
15.
15 affirmative, for
14,
turn?
I'm sorry.
14.
14. 14 affirmative. Resolution 17258 is passed. Mr. Frizzalone?
Yes, thank you. All right, now we'll go on to abating some taxes for our bonds here. So first up, 17-259, abating the taxes heretofore levied in tax levy year 2017 for year 2018 to pay debt service on $75,870,000 outstanding principal amount of general obligation transportation improvement bonds, Series 2010, of Will County, and I so move.
Moved by Mr. Frizzalone, second by Mr. Balich. Madam Clerk, call the roll.
Sure. Mayor? Yes. Brooks? Yes. Ogalla? Yes. Summers? Yes. Singer? Rice? Yes. Harris? Yes. Trenier? Yes. Benefield? Yes. Fritz? Yes. Gould? Yes. Militello? Yes. Balich? Yes. Frizzalone?
Yes.
Parker? Yes. Staley Ferry? Thank you. Dollinger? Yes. Markham? Yes. Hart? Yes. Tumanello? Yes. Weigel?
Yes.
Ferry?
Yes.
And Mustis?
Yes.
Thank you.
23 affirmative.
23 affirmative, motion is carried.
Next up, 17-260, abating the taxes heretofore levied in tax levy year 2017 for the year 2018 to pay debt service on $15,770,000 outstanding principal amount of GO refunding bonds, Series 2012, Will County, and I so move.
Moved by Mr. Frizzalone, second by Mr. Mayor. Any discussion, any discussion? Previous roll by Ms. Parker, second by Ms. Militello. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Contrary, motion is carried.
Next up, 17-261, abating the taxes heretofore levied in tax levy year 2017 for year 2018 to pay debt service on $5,480,000 outstanding principal amount of GO refunding bonds, Series 2014. The county will, and I so move.
Moved by Mr. Frizzalone, second by Ms. Dollinger. Any questions? Any question? Previous roll call by Mr. Tumanello, second by Ms. Fritz. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Contrary, motion has carried.
17-262, abating the taxes heretofore levied in tax levy year 2017 for 2018 to pay debt service on $16,750,000 outstanding principal amount of GO refunding bonds, Series 2015A, County of Will. I so move.
Moved by Mr. Frizzalone, second by Ms. Ogalla. Any questions? Any questions? Previous roll by Mr. Benefield, second by Mr. Balich. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Contrary, motion has carried.
17-263, abating the taxes heretofore levied in tax year 2017 for 2018 to pay service on $175 million outstanding principal amount of GO refunding bonds, Series 2016, County will, and I so move.
Moved by Mr. Frizzalone, second by Ms. Hart. Any questions? Any questions? Previous roll by Ms. Dollinger, second by Ms. Trenier. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Contrary, motion has carried.
And 17-264, authorizing county executive to execute necessary documents for the delinquent tax program. I so move.
Moved by Mr. Frizzalone, second by Mr. Brooks. Any questions? Any questions? Previous roll by Mr. Ferry, second by Ms. Summers. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Contrary, motion is carried.
Our next Finance Committee meeting is scheduled for November 7th at 10 a.m., where I invite all to come. We will, as I said, have the budget review and a quasi-little workshop where we can talk about what's presented, and finally, go Cubs.
Thank you very much, Mike.
Thanks, Larry.
Next up, Public Works Transportation, Mr. Gould, Chairman.
Good morning, Mr. Executive.
Good morning,
fellow
John.
board members. First, I have Resolution 17-265, confirming an award of contract to deconstruction led on September 20th for Shanahan-Manuka Road over the I&M Canal, County Board 6. This is a bridge replacement. I move for approval.
Moved by Mr. Gould, second by Ms. Militello. Any questions? Any questions? Previous roll by Ms. Rice, second by Ms. Winfrey. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Contrary, motion has carried.
Resolution 17-266, an improvement by the county under the Illinois Highway Code for Shanahan-Manuka Road, County Board District 6, using MFT funds. I move for approval.
Moved by Mr. Gould, second by Ms. Militello. Any questions? Any questions? Previous roll by Ms. Hart, second by Mr. Brooks. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Contrary, motion has carried.
Resolution 17267, authorizing the intergovernmental agreement for the installation of bike trail warning signs and lights along 143rd Street at the intersection of Pheasant Lane, County Board District 7. I move for approval.
Moved by Mr. Gould, second by Ms. Parker. Any questions? Any questions? Previous roll by Mr. Ferry, second by Ms. Rice. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Contrary, motion is carried.
Resolution 17268, authorizing an intergovernmental agreement between the County of Will and the City of Crest Hill for the proposed installation of illuminated street name signs at various intersections on Weber Road, Renwick Road, and Caton Farm Road, County Board Districts 3, 9, and 13. I move for approval.
Moved by Mr. Gould, second by Mr. Ferry. Any questions? Any questions? Previous roll by Ms. Parker, second by Mr. Balich. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Contrary, motion is carried.
Resolution 17269, authorizing the approval of additional professional engineering services agreement for design engineering services with V3 Companies of Illinois for the 143rd Street Corridor Study, County Board District 7. I move for approval.
Moved by Mr. Gould, second by Mr. Balich. Any question? Any questions? Previous roll by Mr. Frizzalone, second by Ms. Hart. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Contrary, motion has carried.
Resolution 17270, authorizing an intergovernmental agreement between the County of Will and the Village of Bolingbrook for the improvement of Weber Road from south of Normantown Road to 119th Street in County Board Districts 3 and 4. I move for approval.
Moved by Mr. Gould, second by Mr. Parker. Any questions? Any questions? Previous roll call by Ms. Winfrey, second by Ms. Summers. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Contrary, motion has carried.
Resolution 17271, authorizing a contract for the sale of real estate and temporary easement between the County of Will and Bank of America for the reconstruction of Bell Road at 143rd Street intersection in County Board District 7. I move for approval.
Moved by Mr. Gould, second by Mr. Balich. Any question? Any question? Previous roll by Mr. Mayor, second by Ms. Rice. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Contrary, motion has carried.
Resolution 17272, authorizing driveways and access agreement between the County of Will and Bank of America for the reconstruction of Bell Road at 143rd Street intersection, County Board District 7. I move for approval.
Moved by Mr. Gould, second by Mr. Balich. Any questions? Any questions? Previous roll by Mr. Frizzalone, second by Ms. Dollinger. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Contrary, motion has carried.
Resolution 17273, authorizing approval of supplemental professional services agreement for design engineering services with HDR Engineering for roadway and appurtenant work at 80th Avenue from 191st Street to 183rd Street, using the county's allotment of county RTA tax funds, County Board Districts 2 and 12. I move for approval.
Moved by Mr. Gould, second by Mr. Tumanello. Any questions? Any questions? Previous roll by Ms. O'Gallagher, second by Ms. Fritz. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Contrary, motion has carried.
Our next meeting is November 7th at 9 o'clock. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Don. Good report. Next up, Judicial Committee, Mr. Benefield, Chairman.
Good morning, Mr. Executive.
Good morning.
It still is morning.
Yes, it is.
We have two items on the agenda today, both of which will require public hearing. My question is, do we need to go into public hearing for each one individually, or can we open up public hearing to discuss both?
Each one.
We need each one.
They have to be individually.
Yes,
Okay,
yes.
then I motion that we open up public hearing to discuss Resolution
Moved by
17274.
Mr. Benefield, second by Ms. Fritz. Madam Clerk, call the roll.
Sure. Mayor? Brooks? O'Gala? Summers? Singer? Rice? Harris? Trainier? Benefield?
Yes.
Fritz? Gould? Militello? Balich? Frizzalone? Winfrey? Parker? Staley Ferry? Dollinger? Markham? Hart? Tumanello? Weigel? Ferry? And Mustis. Thank you.
23 affirmative. We are in public hearing. Mr. Benefield, want to explain?
We're discussing Resolution 17274, which is increasing the law library fees. The proposed increase is from $13 to $20. We also have Mr. Roger Holland here, if we have any additional questions regarding that proposed increase.
Okay. Any questions? Any questions? Anyone from the public wish to speak on this issue? Anyone from the public wish to make some comment? Anyone from the public? Anybody from the board? Mr. Benefield.
I would move that we close public hearing.
Moved by Mr. Benefield, second by Mr. Tumanello. Call the roll, please.
Mayor? Brooks? Ogala? Summers? Singer? Rice? Harris? Trainier? Benefield?
Yes.
Fritz? Gould? Militello? Balich? Frizzalone? Winfrey? Parker? Staley Fairley? Dollinger? Markham? Hart? Tumanello? Weigel? Ferry? And Mustis. Thank you.
23 affirmative. We are out of public hearing. Mr. Benefield.
I would like to move that for Resolution 17-274 to increase law library fees from $13 to $20, and I so move.
Moved by Mr. Benefield, second by Ms. Ogala. Any questions? Previous roll call by Mr. Gould, second by Mr. Militello. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Contrary, motion has carried.
I'd like to open up public hearing for Resolution 17275, increasing the judicial facilities fee, and I so move.
Moved by Mr. Benefield, seconded by Mr. Balich. Madam Clerk, call the roll.
Sure. Mayor? Brooks? Ogala? Summers? Rice? Harris? Trainier? Benefield?
Yes.
Fritz? Gould? Militello? Balich? Frizzalone? Winfrey? Parker? Staley Ferry? Dollinger? Markham? Hart? Tumanello? Weigel? Ferry? And Mustis. Thank you.
23 affirmative.
23 affirmative. We are in public hearing. Mr. Benefield.
We're discussing Will County Ordinance 17275, increasing the judicial facilities fees. Currently, the judicial facility fee is $25. The Chief Judge has recommended, and the Judicial Committee has concurred to increase the judicial facility fees from $25 to $30, effective December 1st, 2017. Any questions?
Any questions? Any questions? Anybody from the public wish to speak on this issue? Anyone from the public wishing to speak? Anybody from the public? Any board member? Mr. Benefield.
I move to close public hearing.
Moved by Mr. Benefield, seconded by Ms. Ogala. Madam Clerk, call the roll.
Sure. Mayor? Brooks? Ogala? Summers? Rice? Harris? Trainier? Benefield?
Yes.
Fritz? Gould? Militello? Balich? Frizzalone? Winfrey? Parker? Staley Ferry? Dollinger? Markham? Hart? Tumanello? Weigel? Ferry? Mustis. Thank you.
23 affirmative.
23 affirmative. We are, public hearing has been closed. Continue, Mr. Benefield.
I move Resolution 17275 to increase the judicial facility fees.
Moved by Mr. Benefield, seconded by Mr. Frizzalone. Any question, Ms. Summers?
No. No. Harris.
Pardon me?
I have no question.
You had delight? You didn't have it? Mr. Harris?
Yeah, a few years ago, we raised this fee from to its current amount of $25. We're voting now to increase it to $30, which is the max. My concern is that this fee was used partially to help fund the courthouse, and I know that estimates came in a little lower than what we had proposed a few years ago, so that's one of the reasons I believe this fee is being recommended to increase. So I'm just concerned that if the estimate come in a little lower, do we have a plan in place to address that part of the funding for the courthouse? So it's more of a comment.
Was that a question? Just comment? Okay. Thank you. Any other comments? Any other comments? Previous roll by Ms. Molitello, second by Ms. Dollinger. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Contrary? Motion has carried.
Thank you, Mr. Executive. That concludes our report for today. Our
Thank
next
you.
Judicial Committee meeting is scheduled for November 7th, 9 a.m.
Thank you, Darren. Next up, Public Health and Safety Committee. Ms. Ogala, Chairperson.
Good morning, Mr. Executive and fellow board
Good morning.
members. First on my agenda is Resolution 17-231, amending the Will County Animal Control Ordinance to adjust the registration fees for dogs, cats, and ferrets, and I so move.
Moved by Ms. Ogala, second by Ms. Fritz. Any discussion? Any discussion? Previous roll by Ms. Parker, seconded by Ms. Molitello. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Contrary, motion has carried.
Next is Resolution 17-276, amendments to the Will County Food Service and Retail Food Store Sanitation Ordinance. We should note that many of these fees that we charge for these inspection services that the county does through the health department have not increased for many, many years. So this is to help bring us in line to the true cost of the inspection services we provide, and I so move.
Moved by Ms. Ogala, second by Mr. Balich. Any questions? Any questions? Previous roll by Ms. Ferry, or Mr. Ferry, and second by Ms. Summers. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Contrary, motion has carried.
Next is Resolution 17-277, renewing contracts for disposable washcloths for Sunny Hill Nursing Home, and I so move.
Moved by Ms. Ogala, second by Mr. Tumanello. Any questions? Any questions? Previous roll by Mr. Mayor. All in favor, second by Ms. Trainier. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Contrary, motion has carried.
Next is Resolution 17-278, renewing contract for exam gloves for Sunny Hill Nursing Home, and I so move.
Moved by Ms. Ogala, second by Ms. Fritz. All in favor signify by saying aye. Contrary, motion has carried.
Next is 17-279, renewing contracts for medical products at Sunny Hill Nursing Home, and I so move.
Moved by Ms. Ogala, second by Ms. Winfrey. Any questions? Any questions? Previous roll by Ms. Summers, second by Mr. Markham. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Contrary, motion has carried.
Next is Resolution 17-280, renewing contracts for disposable incontinence supplies for Sunny Hill Nursing Home, and I so move.
Moved by Ms. Ogala, second by Ms. Fritz. Any questions? Any questions? Previous roll by Ms. Dollinger, second by Ms. Hart. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Contrary, motion is carried.
And the last resolution is 17-281, authorizing the county executive to renew the lease agreement for the Will County Regional Office of Education, and I so move.
Moved by Ms. Ogala, second by Ms. Dollinger. Any questions? Previous roll call by Ms. Winfrey, seconded by Mr. Harris. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Contrary, motion has carried.
And finally, I will just let everyone know, our next Public Health and Safety Committee meeting is scheduled for November 2nd at 9 a.m. Thank you.
Thank you, Judy. Next up, Legislative and Policy Committee, Ms. Hart, Chairperson.
Good afternoon.
Good
It is now
afternoon, Suzanne.
Thank you, Larry. We right now are getting ready for our 2018 priorities. We were kind of in the midst of talking about it in our last meeting. This is one time where I'm going to put out, again, a shout out for any of our department heads and directors to please come if you have, or contact us, please. Any issues that we need to maybe go ahead and address to put onto our priorities for our agenda. We also, as everyone knows, next week is going to, the legislators will be back down. I just saw your son, Junior, and we were talking about veto. So it'll be a very interesting year, to say the least, with everything that has been going on. Our next meeting, November 14th, 9 a.m.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Suzanne. Next up, Capital Improvements Committee, Mr. Tumanello. Chairman.
Good afternoon, Mr. Executive.
Good afternoon, Ray.
Hello, board members. We have no items of business this month to conduct here at the County Board, and just to let everyone know, our next Capital Improvements Committee meeting is scheduled for November 7th at 11 a.m.
Thank you very much, Ray. Next up is the Executive Committee, Mr. Mustis, Chairman.
Good afternoon, Mr. Executive, County Board members.
Jim.
First item on the Executive Committee agenda today is a public hearing regarding the updates for the Will County Solid Waste Management Plan. I believe our Director of Solid Waste, Mr. Olson, is going to give us a oversight of the plan. So, so I'll move to go into
Public hearing.
Public hearing. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Moved by Mr. Mustis and second by Mr. Mayor for public hearing. Madam Clerk, call the roll.
Sure. Mayor? Yes. Brooks? Yes. O'Gala? Yes. Summers? Yes. Harris? Yes. Trenier? Benefield? Fritz? Yes. Gould? Yes. Militello? Balich? Frizzalone? Winfrey? Yes. Parker? Yes. Staley Ferry? Yes. Dollinger? Yes. Markham? Yes. Hart? Yes. Tuminello? Weigel? Yes. Ferry?
Yes.
And Mustis.
Yes. Yeah, Dean, I think your presentation should be part of the public hearing. So, okay.
Do we have a quorum?
Yes. Thank God. We
How
do
many?
Are they leaving or?
How many?
How many?
16? 16 affirmative. We are in public hearing.
Good morning, Executive. County Board, good morning. I was going to briefly go over our 75-page document with you. Please know that we need to do a solid waste plan update approximately every 5 years based on state law, which requires us to assess the waste generation that we currently have as well as projecting it out for about 20 years. The last update was approved by the County Board in 2008. For a clear understanding, there we go, sorry. For a clear understanding of the changes that we've made in this plan, you can look at the Appendix D, and you can actually see anything that we've modified or added to the plan over the years, including this current update. We are continuing to have our delegation agreement with the Illinois EPA. We are continuing to use landfilling as our dominant disposal method. We're calling for more construction and demolition recycling facilities. We are also calling for more food scrap recycling. We're increasing goals for residential, school, and commercial collection with an overall diversion goal going from 40% to 55% over the next 5 years. And we also are taking public comments. So just to give you a little bit of data on that delegation agreement, we've had that in place actually since before our very first solid waste plan. The first solid waste plan was in 1991, and this dates back to 1988. What this does is allows our inspectors not only to go out and worry about burn complaints or illegal dumping, but they actually get to inspect permanent facilities that are regulated by the EPA, such as landfills, closed and open, transfer stations, construction and demolition recycling facilities, CCDD facilities, and more. And what that does is rather than relying on Springfield to send out an inspector once in a while, we actually have people on staff that can go out immediately if there's an issue. So it's a quicker response. It also has resulted in thousands of cubic yards of material being cleaned up over the years. And just to give you a visual on that, there's a site that when our inspectors got there, what it looked like, and then after it was cleaned up. There are thousands of sites that have been restored to compliance since 1988. 63 sites were restored in 2016. 2,283 tires were cleaned up in 2016, and over 35,000 yards of material was cleaned up in 2016. So they're doing a good job with that part of our solid waste plan. C&D facilities, just to clarify, these are not CCD sites. These are actually construction and demolition recycling facilities. Think of where your curbside bottles and cans go. They get sorted by different machinery. This is actually designed to sort bricks and metal and wood and shingles. Nowadays, when you have your roof redone, your shingles are getting recycled. And that is because we have shingle recycling within a certain distance by state law. So that is something that we want to see increasing. Food scrap composting might be relatively new for you to hear about. We've been actively talking about this. This goes back to backyard composting. You've been able to do certain food scraps in the backyard compost, but now there's commercial composting available, and it is being done in the Romeoville area. We do have Lewis University that does food scrap composting on campus and takes it to that Romeoville facility. We'd like to see more of that. In addition, there is on-site food scrap composting known as anaerobic digestion. And this is something where you're a large food scrap generator, maybe a hospital, a nursing home, even hotels. And there you could actually turn that into a biogas and use it as a fuel. So this is something we'd like to see growing over the next 5 years. Our residential recycling program, of course, that's been going gangbusters, but what we saw was a lot of folks, when they switched from the carts, or switched from the little toters to the carts, they actually had a decrease, and they went to a bi-weekly collection. That's actually caused a lot of recyclables to be lost into the waste stream because people mix up the dates that they can put their recycling out. They go on vacation, they have a huge amount, so they put all the extra into the garbage. What we'd like to see is the 2 carts taken every week, and we are going to see that actually starting in Joliet in January with their new contract that they've just done. And we're seeing that in more communities as we're moving along, but that's something we're encouraging. We would also like to see all condos and townhouses included in municipal contracts. Sometimes these are left out because they're dumpster serviced as opposed to curbside. And likewise, we'd like to see all apartment buildings, and this would be kind of new. There's not too many communities that do this in our county. It is being done in other places in the state. And this is a great way to increase recycling. In fact, one of the comments that we received early on was a resident in the Romeoville area who's very frustrated with the management of her apartment complex not putting recycling in for her. And then lastly, food scraps, and giving an option to people, even if you don't want a backyard compost, to put that in with your landscape waste, which would give you 10 months out of the year that you could actually be participating with that. We'd like to see schools improve. We had 34% diversion rate on average from the schools that actually were able to give us numbers. We'd like to see more schools actually getting those numbers. We have a full-time educator on staff who is actually out doing waste audits with schools, teaching them how much of their cafeteria waste could be recycled through food scrap composting, also teaching children how to pack waste-free lunches and do food sharing tables. So if you're a child who has too much food and you don't want to take it home, rather than throw it away, you could put it on a sharing table, and another child who may not have enough food could actually partake and take that. We'd like to see more recycling. Some of the schools are not doing their cardboard, so we'd like to see some of that, as well as specialty recycling items. Oops. And I skipped. Hang on. Sorry. Okay. I'm sorry, my clicker is there. All right. Commercial recycling is 38% of our total waste generated in the county, and as this picture shows, that's cardboard being recycled, baled. That's the best way to do your cardboard, most cost effective. In fact, it can actually generate revenue for some folks. We'd like to see them increase their recycling at all the different commercial establishments where possible. And obviously C&D recycling, we mentioned that if you're remodeling a business, you're building from the ground up, or you're tearing something down, you should be contracting with a C&D recycler rather than a waste hauler so that that material actually gets recycled. So that's what we'd like to encourage. And with all that encouragement, we would like to take our goal from 40%, which is what we had back in 2008 approved, and we've achieved consistently over 40%, to 55% diversion. It is a slightly ambitious goal. I don't want to say it isn't. But beyond what I've already stated, we would like to see the county get involved possibly in assisting the unincorporated residents with getting better recycling services. Our unincorporated residents do not have access to landscape collection. They don't have access readily to white goods collection. It costs them extra to have these things removed and recycled. And sometimes they're even openly encouraged to cut the Freon line in their white goods so that they can take it to a scrap yard. And that, of course, defeats the entire purpose of that white good legislation for appliances. So we'd like to fix that. We have an opportunity actually in the Fairmont area working with the township there to possibly do an opt-in contract through the township. But certainly with your endorsement, we could even do this on a regional basis for different sections of the county. So we're throwing that out there. And then also encouraging, obviously, as we said, the more C&D commercial food scrap composting. And with that, I'm going to turn this over to Dean Olson, my director.
Thanks. I know we don't have a lot of time today, but I did want to bring up there was a situation, or I should say a comment that was brought up last month, and it was kind of significant, so I wanted to address that and bring it to your attention. But just as a reminder, we have the Prairie View landfill. That's our main disposal facility, opened in January of 2004. So it accepts only Will County service area waste, and I want to emphasize that because we are limited to just the county and those towns that have even a street in the county. And recently, we were able to lift the restriction that Jerry Weller put on in 1999 to make it 15 more years instead of 2027 closing. So what we'd like to do is, can you click to the next? Is we wanted to get your input on whether or not we should lift the deed restriction for the out-of-county waste. So the reason why this was brought up was we do not have flow control. There's a few sections of the country that have allowed it, but we do not have flow control. So we can't control the waste stream within our county or even that Prairie View service area. So we would like to, well, I shouldn't say we would like to, but we would certainly like to make sure that the landfill stays viable. But a way to do this possibly is to allow outside waste. So we had the original service area pre-Weller amendment, and that was 9 counties. So the idea would be that waste management running the landfill could take waste from another county, and this would help if perhaps we lose some large towns waste going to the facility, or even a lot of commercial type haulers. We have a chance at least to replace that waste. So that would also ensure that we can keep these solid waste programs going, the household hazardous waste collections, the electronic collections, all those inspections that we were mentioning earlier, all those and way more that are in the plan. But we would absolutely want to keep the space for Will County's needs first. So, and then, I don't know if you're aware of this, but part of our deed, we have to keep taking the waste from the Joliet Arsenal ammunition plant for free. So if the Medewan folks next to us want to bring some waste, we have to take it for free. So right now, at least as far as I can remember, it's about $20 million that the federal government saved through that, and probably way more than that, because we've only taken probably a third of that waste. So anyway, so that's, I wanted to throw that out. We could include it in the final plan unless I hear any objections, or we could keep it out if that's the will of the board. You're the ones that decide. It was a comment that was brought up. It does impact our planning. So that's why I threw it out. I did talk to the speaker about this, make sure it was okay to put that in this discussion. And we did receive some comments. We've gotten some verbal comments. I've had people come up to me even today and give me some comments, but I would encourage, we have the comment period through Sunday. Please send those comments to us, Marta and myself. And you want to put on the last slide? So our emails are on there, and we encourage that. And if we omitted something, we certainly want to include it, whether it's a hauler or a facility or something needs to be updated. We will definitely update it since the July, when we sent this out to the public in July. So that's all I have at the moment.
Any questions, Marta or Dean? Mr. Weigel?
Concerning expansion of the landfill to 9 counties, do you have any figures on how long, what does that do to the life of our landfill? Now 2040 we're going to go to now. Does that make it shorter than that, or do you have any idea what this will be? What are our costs there? Will we still be competitive with other landfills? Are we higher cost, or will they still go to other landfills?
Well, I think the reason why this request was made was due to the competitive nature of this market. By limiting waste management to accepting only waste from Will County and those towns that come in, it really limits them, so they can't go to another county and accept that. Now, as far as the controlling what the waste stream, how much we would get, we can certainly put a cap on it. There's, in the host agreement, it basically cites that the solid waste director can, and I do every year, I send them a letter saying the cap exclusive of the free waste, because we don't know how much free waste we're going to get in from Medewin, is X amount of tons. So we can certainly do that. Of course, that would have to be worked out with waste management.
Mr. Mustis?
Yeah, I'm going to perhaps explain it a little differently than Dean. When we worked originally on this with waste management, and we were trying to make a determination of how to set fees and what would the waste stream be, we had an agreement that was already in place that basically allowed for out-of-county waste, but was an import-export type of leveling off. We exported a ton of garbage out of Will County, we could import a ton. So we would never exceed the amount of waste that was generated within Will County. So when we talk about 9 counties, it's really still on tonnage. We would still never put more in that landfill than is produced in Will County. Now, the reason we did that, because there was a certain amount of tonnage that was required to make it economically viable. And Will County, for a number of years, because of growth, we were able to generate enough garbage, and there was enough controlled. The waste stream was a significant amount of waste stream that waste management could put into our landfill. But let me point out, we're not the only landfill in the area, so some our waste is exported out of the county. And it could continue. I'll just use an example. If there's a waste hauler, say, has Joliet, and it's a big city, or a Bolingbrook, and they say, well, we have a landfill too, and it's wherever. It's down the road. It's in another county. They'll take all that to their own landfill. I mean, so that was really just an export-import type of situation. So I should understand, we would never go over the waste that is generated within Will County, and the director makes that determination of what that number is. I do think it's important for us at least to take a look at it, because we want to make sure that our landfill is economically viable for a number of reasons. I might also point out that I don't know what it was when we started. I can't recall, but our recycling programs, thankfully, are being, I think, pretty successful, actually. So also remember, we're taking more and more out of that waste stream that would go into Prairie View. So I think we should at least take a look at it. Personally, I think we should take a look at it. The other comments I'd like to make is about the unincorporated areas, and recycling in unincorporated Will County has always been a little challenge, because it gets kind of, you know, they do it in one area, don't do it in another. You know, there's a cost involved. We who live in unincorporated areas have to pay for these services. So I like the idea that you're going to focus a little bit more on those services for the unincorporated areas. I think it's important that they also be given every opportunity to recycle. And Abel, the fellow who cuts my grass, I don't think he's going to take my food scraps. And I point that out is because if there was another alternative, you know, even if, say, you know, if you can bring it over to another site, like a school that's doing it or a hospital that's doing it, maybe that's just a thought. The other thing I'd like to make a comment on is the CCDs, the quarries that continue to take the so-called clean construction debris. I think that should continue to be a concern of ours. Many of those quarries are in unincorporated areas that are dependent on groundwater. I have a 99% confidence rate that contamination will take place at one time or another. You know, whether it shows up today or it shows up 50 years from now, it's going to show up. I don't think there's really enough safeguards or enough way to monitor what's going in those quarries to make them safe as unlined landfills. So that's another comment I'd like to make, that I think we should continue to resist those types of facilities coming into Will County. That's it. Thank you.
Dean, so we're not going to vote on this. This is still in the comment phase. Is that the question? All right.
It goes through Sunday.
Through Sunday. So at this point in time, the way the report stands now, the update, you're not accepting out-of-county waste?
Right. We don't have that ability because the deed restricts. It's only Will County and then the towns, like, say, Naperville's partially in the county. You could take all of that.
Second question. I had a provider in my district ask why they were not included in this report.
We will definitely take that and make sure that everyone's included that submits comments.
Okay, I don't know if they submitted comment or not, but they received your
verbally.
Okay, they received your report, environmental.
Yes.
And they asked me why they were not in there, so that's why I'm asking you, because I don't know.
It was a reporting issue at the time. We didn't have up-to-date reports from them, so that's Marta handles that end of it. I don't.
Anyone who hauls material in the county by county ordinance is required to report to us every 6 months on the amount that they provide. We've tried to make it as easy as possible. There's an online report right on willcountygreen.com. They were not submitting reports, so they were not.
Maybe you can get together with them and
They actually have updated now since the plan came out.
Okay.
And given us all their reports that we were missing.
Okay. Thank you.
We're good. We're good.
Okay, thank you.
I just wanted to say I probably read than I should have, and I love it. I love the composting. I love the biogas for energy. I love that you're working with the organization ShareFest. I love your one-day events. I've seen Dean at least one of those events. I love the latex paint recycling. The picture with the Girl Scouts was priceless. That's Facebook gold, as we say. I just love it.
Yeah, I didn't hear you address, you know, you're talking about increasing the life of the landfill. Well, I brought it up when we went on the tour, I think it was last year or the year before, I can't remember when it was, but we went on a tour, and there's no reason that we shouldn't be trying to increase the height, because there's nothing around there. And if we increase the height, we increase the life of the landfill. And, you know, I brought it up, and nothing's happened. You didn't bring it, you know, you're not moving it forward. And obviously, if you're talking about bringing in garbage from other areas, all the collar areas, Orland Park, Tinley Park, you know, they're bringing that garbage to us too. And they're bringing all their garbage. That's Cook County garbage. But they're bringing, because we have sites in Will County.
Absolutely.
So if we're going to continue to be viable and then increase and take more garbage, don't you think that we should be addressing the height Because you can't add land, but you can add height.
Well, keep in mind that based on the last capacity report from Waste Management, we have 20 years of capacity. So once that starts, if that changes.
I hate to interrupt you, but I mean, if you got 20 years, how long does it take to get something passed federally that lets you go another 20 feet high?
Right. Well, the federal government wouldn't restrict the size of the facility. Well, first of all, it'd be the siting authority, which would be you, and then secondly, it'd be the EPA who would permit.
I mean, there's a process, and it's not a quick process.
Right. I understand what you're saying, and just so you know, we'll certainly take that under consideration. But right now, we do have the 20 years of capacity, and that's all we're planning for during these planning stages. We have a 20-year cycle that we plan for. So we don't look at 40 years from now or whatever, but we look at 20-year snapshots. We might mention it. We could certainly mention that could be a possibility.
If you say you're planning for 20 years, what do you wait until 15 years is up and then look for, at the last minute?
We can do that at any time.
Well, why don't we do it then?
Well, he's already addressed the 5-year thing. I think the speaker probably wants to say something.
Let me talk about our county solid waste plan, which I think is probably the best solid waste plan in the state of Illinois. Not only our foresight of providing for solid waste, but the way we implement and what we accomplish. I don't think there's a county in this state that comes close to doing what we're doing here. But the capacity issues and the length of time of capacity issues, Mr. Ballard, you're right. It takes these are long cycles of when you look out to when you're going to get approval. And that's the very reason I'm going to bring something up that's not in the solid waste plan, and that is we should, Dean, I think, look at, is there a possibility of any expansion at Prairie View? I mean, can we add another cell there or not? And the reason I'm bringing it up is if we started working on it today, maybe you could get it done in about 15 years, because it takes that long. We worked 10 years on the current landfill, and then we negotiated for another 4 before we opened it. Right. It is a lengthy period, and if there is the possibility of some expansion there, we should take a look at it. If there's not a possibility of expansion there, then maybe we'd look at, is there some other potential sites for a landfill in Will County, just in general, because you'd say, well, we might have some other areas that, even within that general area, say, that maybe we could do another one. So I do think we should look at that future expansion now, even though it wouldn't occur maybe for another 20 years. So in that regard, I agree. So
sure.
We should take that up now, I think.
I mean, if you're asking a question, is there space? Well, the footprint is 223.
Yeah, I am talking about the footprint. I'm not talking about height here.
Right. Well, the footprint is 223 acres, and the parcel is 455. Now, obviously, you have to have roads, you have to have an office, you have to have the gas-to-energy plant, that's there. You have to have the maintenance shop. You have to have sedimentation ponds. There's all kinds of different things that you have to support. But there is some space, yeah. I mean, it's probably not going to be nearly as big as the original size, but there's certainly enough air. And then you would probably want to do a vertical. If you're going to do a horizontal, you would probably want to go a little bit higher, if you could, but keep in mind, there is a certain way to do it, and you have to have a certain slope and that type of thing.
Well, my point is regardless of the technical part, Dean, just to see if it's possible. That's all I'm saying is if it's, that gives us the 40-year plan then.
Yeah.
But if it's not possible, I mean, I don't even know some of the geology when we get out of there. I don't know what you're going to run into, and like I say, it may
may mean you're going to have to, the possibility of redeveloping the site to move things around, or maybe we're going to need to buy another 100 acres for support. I don't know.
Yeah.
But I'm saying that you should be looking at it now.
Yeah.
If we're going to start looking at, we know the next 20 is taken care of. What are you doing to look the 20 after that? Going to like the 40-year solution.
Sure.
So I think we should start at least
We
looking
can certainly
at it.
look at it, that's no problem. Just keep in mind, if we keep recycling, we probably won't use as much space either. So also keep that in mind. So,
But it's still, we were
yeah.
looking for.
That's not that you won't have some waste probably left over.
There'll always be waste.
Yeah. So.
To start off, to echo what Mr. Musis had said, Dean, you and your department do a very good job, and it's to be commended because we do stand out among many as doing a very good job. And Waste Management's a great partner of ours, and I understand these things have to be viable, and I get that. I just wanted to mention to the group, though, that I hope this landfill can extend well beyond the date that we anticipate right now, it no longer being viable. For that matter, I hope that geographically within that footprint, it could be expanded and we continue to use it for another 20 or 40 or 80 years, because siting a new landfill is very, very difficult to do. And when you site a new landfill, there are all sorts of disruptions to all those who are around it, and it creates quite a ruckus, to say the least. There aren't a lot of people who seek a landfill next to them, which is why, though, and because history is important, and it's important that we remember this. And I understand, as I hear behind me, some of the perceived biases or perception by perceived bias about this. But I just want to remind the group that the reason the landfill is there was part of a negotiation that took place many, many years ago as when the Joliet Arsenal ammunition plant, that property was being reconverted from public use to public-private use. And there were a lot of people in the Congress that were extremely concerned about having a landfill next to a veteran cemetery. And the reason that it was approved and cited there was a case made by a number of people that Will County had to suffer a significant economic loss when the ammunition plant was shut down. And there were thousands and thousands of jobs that were lost. And you could also argue, thank God, because that means we weren't in World War II or in Vietnam any longer. But it's important to point out, though, that there was part of a negotiation to benefit Will County because of the fact that a number of things had changed in the landscape in Will County that had a lot to do with what the federal government had done or not done. So as a result, Will County was offered an opportunity to have a place just for its garbage. And it became an important federal issue. I mean, by no means am I trying to imply it was huge, but it was important enough for then Senator Glenn to speak about it on the floor of the United States Senate. It was important enough for U.S. Senator McCain to speak about it on the floor of the U.S. Senate. This was not a pass-through, also said thing that the federal government participated in. So before we consider a policy where we would open this up to accepting other counties' garbage only for the sake of looking at it from its economic viability, it's important for this board to understand why it is the way it is now, what occurred in the past, and for that matter, why that agreement was done, and the importance of a deal remaining a deal. And even though things do change, when this was done, the percentage of recycling was dramatically lower than it is today. And all of the different factors related to that significantly decreased the amount of garbage that goes into a landfill. Lots of different factors changed. I get that too. But it's important to remember the origin of that deal and why it was done, and not only look at it in terms of the economic viability strictly of a year or quarter-by-quarter analysis of that landfill.
Any other comments? Thank you, Dean and Marta. Mr. Mustis?
I'll move to come out of public hearing.
Moved by Mr. Mustis, second by Mr. Okay, well, hold on one second. Dale Oakstra would like to make a comment before we close the public hearing.
Thank you, Mr. Executive. My name is Dale Hoekstra. I'm the Director of Operations for Waste Management. Many of you know me, and we've enjoyed a good relationship for a long time since we became the operator of your facility in 2004. And as been pointed out during these discussions, that was a long road. It took us well more than 10 years to get to the day of opening that facility on January of 2004. And we've enjoyed a vibrant facility ever since that time. I would also like to commend this board on the work that it does with regard to solid waste. You do an excellent job of managing your solid waste in this county, planning for it, and taking care of the needs of your residents as a result. And the Prairie View facility is an important part of that solid waste plan. As Mr. Mustis and Dean Olson and Marta have pointed out, the Prairie View facility is an important component of this county's solid waste plan. Mr. Mustis talked a lot about the federal restriction on the service area, and I would like to encourage you to consider moving forward with a plan to lift that restriction. As the industry continues to change, nothing will stay the same. New major competitors move into the market areas, and you'll see volume leave this facility, which will impact you negatively. And by having that federal restriction lifted, you have control over where that volume can be replaced from. Currently, you do not. As a matter of fact, you are the only federally restricted facility that I am aware of in the United States in such a manner. So I would encourage you to look at that, encourage you to put a plan together to consider it and move forward to lift that restriction federally so that you as a county board have the ability to say we would like more as a result of what we have lost. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Do I need to make the motion to come out of public hearing?
Moved by, and it's been moved by, second by Mr. Mayor.
I'm ready.
Madam Clerk, call the roll.
Mayor?
Yes.
Brooks? Yes. Ogala? Yes. Summers? Yes. Singer? Yes. Rice? Yes. Trainier? Yes. Benefield? Yes. Fritz? Yes. Gould? Yes. Militello? Yes. Balich? Yes. Frizzalone? Yes. Winfrey? Yes. Parker? Yes. Staley Ferry? Yes. Dollinger? Yes. Markham? Yes. Hart? Tuminello? Yes. Weigel? Yes. Ferry? Yes. And Mustis.
Yes.
Thank you.
The next item is the solid waste.
23 affirmative. It's 23 affirmative.
How many?
23.
23 affirmative. We are out of public hearing.
The next item is solid waste management plan update. We did it during the public hearing. Does anyone else have any additional questions on that?
Nope.
Okay, so we'll go to item next item, which is the public hearing, motion to go into public hearing regarding proposed amendments to the consortium action plan submitted to the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development. And I'll move to go into public hearing.
Moved by Mr. Mustis, second by Mr. Mayor. Madam Clerk, call the roll.
Mayor? Yes. Brooks? Yes. Ogala? Yes. Summers? Yes. Singer? Yes. Rice? Yes. Trainier? Yes. Benefield? Yes. Fritz? Yes. Gould? Yes. Militello? Yes. Balich? Yes. Frizzalone? Yes. Winfrey? Yes. Parker? Yes. Staley Ferry? Yes. Dollinger? Yes. Markham? Yes. Tuminello? Yes. Weigel? Yes. Ferry? Yes. And Mustis.
Yes.
Thank you.
22 affirmative.
22 affirmative. We are in public hearing. Mr. Mustis.
Well, it's, I don't know who's going to give a presentation.
Who's making a presentation on in regards to this?
Well, it has to do with the CDBG grant.
Yeah, Mr. Paddock? Is Ron here?
No, he's not. This is a matter relating to the home program.
But it's still part of community block grant, isn't it?
You know what it is? Well, you know, all I can tell you is that consortium action plan usually deals with, it's either Joliet or Bolingbrook, because we,
Well, we don't know what amendments are.
well then, Mr. Executive, I'll make a motion to come out of public hearing and to reschedule the public hearing until the right people can be here.
Okey dokey.
So I'll move to come out of public
Moved by
hearing.
Mr. Mustis, second by Mr. Mayor to remove, come out of public hearing. Madam Clerk, call the roll.
Mayor. Brooks. Ogala. Summers. Singer. Rice. Trainier. Benefield. Fritz. Gould. Militello. Balich. Frizzalone. Winfrey. Parker. Staley Ferry. Dollinger. Markham. Hart. Tumanello. Weigel. Ferry. And Mustis.
Yes.
23 affirmative.
Mr. Executive, I'll make a motion to remove the public hearing for the proposed amendments to the Consortium Action Plan submitted to the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development to be rescheduled next month. So
Moved by Mr. Mustis, second by Mr. Mayor. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Contrary, motion is carried.
Next I have, well, I need to ask now, is that, did the next, which is the substantial amendment to the 5-year action plan, the reallocation of the City of Joliet Home Program grant funds, was this item dependent on that public hearing?
Yep, I imagine.
So I'll make a motion to remove 17282 till next month.
Moved by Mr. Mustis, second by Mr. Mayor. And previous roll call by Mr. Gould, second by Ms. Parker. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Contrary, motion is carried.
Next, we have 17283, awarding bid for toner cartridges, maintenance and cleaning. Also move to approve.
Moved by Mr. Mustis, second by Ms. Trainier. Any questions? Any questions? Previous roll by Mr. Ferry, second by Mr. Markham. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Contrary, motion has carried.
Next, we have 17284, renewing contract for janitorial cleaning services for various buildings, and I'll move for approval.
Moved by Mr. Mustis, second by Ms. Hart. Any questions? Any questions? Previous roll by Ms. Militello, and second by Ms. Dollinger. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Contrary, motion has carried.
Next, we have Amendment 17286, authorizing county executive to execute intergovernmental agreement with Laraway Communication Center 911 Dispatch Executive Board, and I'll move for approval.
Did we skip two?
Would I skip one?
You skipped one. You 178285.
17285.
Yep, and down.
Renewing contracts for the elevator maintenance for various buildings. I'll move for approval.
Moved by Mr. Mustis, second by Mr. Benefield. Any questions? Any questions? Previous roll by Ms. Rice, second by Ms. Staley Ferry. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Contrary, motion has carried.
Okay, next I have 17286, authorizing county executive to execute an intergovernmental agreement with Laraway Communication Center, and I'll move for approval.
Moved by Mr. Mustis, second by Ms. Summers. Any questions? Any questions? Previous roll by Ms. Hart, second by Mr. Singer. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Contrary, motion has carried.
Next I have 17287, coalition membership due for Lower DuPage Rivershed Coalition. I'll move for approval.
Moved by Mr. Mustis, second by Mr. Gould. Any questions? Any questions? Previous roll by Mr. Weigel, second by Mr. Balich. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Contrary, motion has carried.
17288, authorizing an intergovernmental agreement with the Village of Romeoville for pharmaceutical take-back. I'll move for approval.
Moved by Mr. Mussis, second by Mr. Ogala. Any questions? Any questions? Previous roll by Mr. Tumanello, second by Ms. Fritz. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Contrary, motion has carried.
Next, we have Resolution 17289, new hires for the County Executive's Office, Laraway Communication Center. I'll move for approval.
Moved by Mr. Mustis, second by Ms. Winfrey. All in favor? Any questions? Any questions? Previous roll by Ms. Trainier, second by Ms. Rice. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Contrary, motion has carried.
Next, we have 17290, replacement hires for Sunny Hill. I'll move for approval.
Moved by Mr. Mustis, second by Mr. Brooks. Any questions? Any questions? Previous roll by Ms. Winfrey, second by Mr. Markham. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Contrary, motion has carried.
The next executive committee meeting will be on November 2nd at 10 a.m. in this building. Next, I have the appointments by the county executive, and I'll move for approval.
Moved by Mr. Mustis, second by Mr. Brooks. Any questions? Any questions? Previous roll by Mr. Ferry, second by Ms. Summers. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Contrary, motion has carried.
It does conclude my report, but before I move on, Mary, are we going to still, we are going to have a need for an executive session when we get to that portion of the agenda. If you just can stay in the room, I don't think it's going to take very long, is it, Mary? Okay, so we should be able to get through it pretty quickly. So I just want to make sure everybody kind of stays put. So that concludes my report, Mr. Executive.
Thank you. Thank you. Next up is public comment. We have 3 speakers signed up. First speaker is Mary Burnett. Is Mary here? Mary's not here. Mary Burnett's not here.
I think she had to leave, Larry.
Pardon me?
I think she left.
Okay. Second up is Tricia Moss.
We were going to go to lunch today. We got a lunch for the college.
Whoop, I'm sorry. Now you're on.
Hello, as mentioned, my name is Tricia Moss. I'm from Elwood, Illinois. Today, I am speaking on behalf of myself and Mrs. Delilah Legrette, since she's unable to attend this meeting due to the time of day conflicts and she's ill. Both of us are opposed to North Point development east of Route 53 in Elwood area. We recently received a report from IDOT. This specific study is to address the perfect scenario. It includes a closed loop system and the Humboldt Bridge. I will place some of the pages of the study in your mailboxes. Even with this perfect scenario, our infrastructure will fail. Compass Business Park by North Point is projected to generate approximately 53,000 new trips each weekday. About 30% of these trips will be trucks. That estimates around 16,000 trucks. We know we cannot handle the current traffic. How will our roads handle the additional 53,000 trips? We need to fix the problems of the past before it causes more issues. Don't make the same mistake again. Also, who will pay for the work that has to be done to our infrastructure? We are the ones paying for the repairs, reconstruction, construction, expansions. In addition, the Humboldt Bridge will only be a detour and will dump more traffic onto our roads. Next, we see the freight study. The vast majority of those who live in Will County travel outside the county to work. The impacts of this proposed business park cannot be ignored at the county level. This will affect every district you all represent. Roads are not the only problem. Let's not forget about life safety issues. Let's be responsible and have a responsible plan. Thank you.
Thank you. Next we have is Ms. Trainier.
Never mind.
Oh.
I'm jumping the gun.
Oh.
You have another person on your list.
Yes, I do. Tony, you coming down? Okay, this next up is Tony and his wife Sandy A-Rock, and Tony has a question he wants to ask of the Highway Department, Jeff Ronaldson. So, Tony, go ahead.
Tony A. Rock, Brandon Manhattan Road. I just wondered what the plan is for the intersection of Brandon and Manhattan Road from the county. I understand they want to put a turn lane in. Is that true?
Jeff, you know what he's talking about? It's the issue I've been talking to you about for 2 years, and Bruce before you. Tony he lives on the southeast corner of Manhattan and Brandon Road, where you are proposing to put turn lanes in regards to the reconstruction of Manhattan to Magnolia.
Hell, you could have been.
Tony Jeff, can you? He's asking in regards to, or if you just take the mic, Jeff.
Yeah, pertaining to that reconstruction project, per the public hearings and the IDOT Phase 1 process, we are reconstructing that road in total, which does include left turn lanes on Arsenal Road. On that cross-section is carried through the railroad tracks and meeting up with Magnolia, per the approved PDR design.
Okay.
I would like to ask
Talk into the mic, Sandra, would you?
I'd like to ask a question. Why this is important? This road has very little traffic on it, and you've already made it so that the trucks cannot go down this road. Why are you tearing up our property to make 4 turn lanes when it isn't needed?
Well, first I would ask the state's attorney, is this the forum for this discussion? We're in public comment. I can answer that question. I can answer that question.
Your committee, Don, and have a discussion.
I'm not aware that there's a legal implication.
Okay, I'm just making sure, because public comment is usually just been a public making comments and then.
He comes to the county board to ask a public question about what's happening to his property, the north part of his.
And that's fine. I just want to make sure procedures. I'm just making sure for my own self.
Yeah.
I don't think there's no legal issue of asking a constituent and taxpayer why you're taking 30 feet of his property to put a turn lane in.
Correct.
This is, I don't know if this is the appropriate place for Jeff to comment.
Is there
I mean, I think the committee, it should go back to the committee should be advised of the situation. And these types of situations have occurred all over this county, and many property owners have objected to their property being taken, even if it was for a turning lane, 2 feet, 30 feet, no matter what it may have been. But certainly, I think, folks, the better forum is to go to the Public Works Committee, let everybody get the information, including the county engineer, who doesn't then have to do something off the top of his head. And I think it's a better process that way, personally. And I'm not sure Jeff is even prepared to answer the question here. He certainly, I assume, wasn't advised ahead of time to have the information here. You know, so he doesn't have the project, doesn't have the drawings, and, you know, sounds like a little bit of an ambush to me, but I think the committee is where this should go. And I think that's where, and let Jeff be prepared to answer the question in an appropriate, prepared way. That's it.
Well, if you're not prepared, Jeff, then there will be when's the next meeting, Don? 7th of November at 9 o'clock, right here in this room. If you could make it up to that, make sure you're on the agenda. You're on the agenda part, and you can make comments before the full committee and gives Mr. Ronaldson the chance to be prepared for what your question is.
That's fine. We can have an agenda item on the Public Works Committee. I mean, I will just probably close my comments to saying that we have done the traffic study, the projections, and they do show a left turn lane is warranted there. And yes, there's not a lot of traffic now, but as we all know, that section of Arsenal Road is in poor condition. So even I don't take it when I go home to Pontiac. So when we reconstruct it, it will be a good road for people to travel again, and I believe the projections will be fulfilled. So, but if there are more specific questions, I can bring staff to the Public Works Committee that we can address those.
That's okay, Tony, Sandra, is that okay? Okay, thank you. Thank you, Jeff. Anybody else from the public wish to speak at this time? Anybody else from the public wish to speak? Anyone else? Thank you. Comments by county board members. Mr. Trainier.
Yes, thank you, County Executive. Fellow board members, I am not in favor of expanding government. That was not my reasoning behind objecting to the levy that was proposed. I am in favor of letting the taxpayers know the true cost of the government. I do think that that is one of the problems that Springfield had, is they tried to pretend that expenses that they voted to incur weren't there, and they weren't being truthful with the voters. And I think it's important that we be honest and straightforward about the cost of county government, and especially when it comes to the current crisis that we have. And it's not just a crisis in Will County, although I would say it affects every single district, including Speaker Moustis's district. We have a public health crisis, a behavioral health crisis in this opioid epidemic. And I don't think that shorting our potential resources is the answer to that problem. I want to look forward and make sure that we are adequately funding that without cutting other areas. I mean, if there is all this money that these other departments don't need, I'm not sure why we gave it to them last time. So I really want to point out, I'm not about expanding government. I'm about making sure that we adhere to the responsibilities of government. Public health is one of those responsibilities. We have a crisis in this country. I have a neighbor that lost a son. I would really not like to see other people lose their children all over the cost of a couple of hamburgers. And I do think it's important that that we take on our role and speak our mind for our constituents. And if people in my district think that my not voting for the lower levy is an issue, they'll let me know at the ballot box. But so far they haven't. So I'm going to continue to speak up in the manner that I have been. Thank you.
Any other county board members wish to speak? Any other county board members? Announcement by our majority leader, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Executive. Good afternoon. Just want to make everybody aware, as I'm sure a lot of you have seen, some of my colleagues are wearing their pink and representing the Breast Cancer Awareness Month here in October, that in about 1 in 8 U.S. women will develop breast cancer. In fact, I hope everybody says a prayer for, I will ask everybody to say a prayer for my sister-in-law, who is now going through had just been recognized as having cancer, and they're going to be going through chemo and all that starting very soon. But in 2017, there was an estimated 252,000 new cases of cancer, and that's not just for women. In 2017, over 2,470 men were also seen as having issues with breast cancer. So please remember the folks in our families and our prayers and everything. We have had an interesting board meeting today. We have been all over the place. on a lot of different things. I think that one thing that we can all come together is that we try to do what we think is in the best interest of the citizens of this county. We just sometimes approach it a little differently. And so with that, I'm going to say go Cubs, and hopefully at the end of the game today, I will be cheering on them going out to Los Angeles.
Thank you. Next up, our minority leader, Mr. Brooks.
I apologize.
Mr.
Long day, and
Mr. Mayor, Mr. Mayor wants to take your time, Herb.
Yeah.
It's fine.
Well, why
yield.
not, Herb? Why not?
I yield my time.
I'm not taking your time, Herb. Just going to extend mine.
Okay.
You know, we had a lot of conversations today on the Metro Board, and I also want to recognize Jack Parlow. He's been a friend for over 20 years, and I'm really sorry that he and his family are going through all the things that are going on right now. But I also would like to identify, we now have an opening in that position, and we hope that citizens of this county are taking a look at stepping up and maybe going to our website and putting in an application. Jack's shoes will be extremely almost impossible to replace. But my heart and prayers go out to he and his family. Thank you. Is that okay?
Well worth it.
Now, Mr. Brooks.
Good afternoon, Mr. Executive, and those of you that are left in this room. Even though, in spite of the fact we may not always agree on voting some of the resolutions, today was a great day in Will County. With our proclamations, I want to thank Dale Hoekstra, Waste Management, for his contributions to District 8 to helping those agencies came before this board earlier today. You heard from the Spanish Center, 48 years in service, and they almost shut the doors. And thanks to help with Waste Management and to our district to help them and the other agencies, thank you so much for that. In addition to that, it's also a great day in Will County recognizing the unions on today and their contributions. You heard their stories today where some of them were almost at layoff and losing their jobs and home, etc. But because of the work this county board did collectively, they're now back to work, and so I think it's a great day. Also, on a sad note, remember one of our ADF employees, Kevin Brewer, 37 years old, on last Saturday, the 14th of October, while at work at the ADF here in the city of Joliet. He passed away. His funeral services is today, visitation today, funeral tomorrow. His wife, Brooke Hernandez Brewer, former city council person in the city of Joliet, that is her husband, Kevin Brewer, 37. Keep him in your prayers as well. Thank you all. God bless you. Thank you.
Speaker Mustis.
I have no comments. I thank everyone for all the work you've done all month long, our county board staff, the executive staff, and of course to my colleagues here on the county board. Thank you. By the way,
thank you. So, we are in going into executive session for the purpose of Mary pending litigation. So.